Hello, hello, hello. It actually worked quite well. That's exactly what I wanted. Unbelievable. This is unrehearsed and it worked. Welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. It is the 6th of November 2020. Welcome to the panel. Well, this is so crazy. Welcome to Islam Creates Urukai, a Borg okay, Thunder will have to explain this, what this is. Thunder, who are you?
I am Urukai, and for anybody that's watched the Lord of the Rings or read Lord of the Rings, they'll be familiar with the creation of Saruman, I think it is, who created Urukai, which are just hell bent on the bloodshed of human beings of Middle Earth. And I think it was kind of symbolic, if you like, of recent events of the past couple of weeks where violence and bloodshed has been spilt in the name of the religion of peace. So a fitting image, and I think it sums up the Islamic mindset at this moment in time, and maybe we'll be going on to discuss other things that have come into recent news events on YouTube.
Are they also the victims?
Sorry?
Are they also the victims? Because I hear Muslims always saying, yeah, but we are actually the victims.
In what sense are they the victims? They're only the victims, and I've said this time and again, time and again, time and again over the years. Um, how can I put this? The only Muslims that are victims of other Muslims are the Muslims that are following the ideology as represented by the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sunnah of Allah and Muhammad against the hypocrite Muslims. So they will only kill hypocrite Muslims, which is something that we will be reading in the Quran time and again about hypocritical Muslims. Those are the victims. But then in real talk now, they were never Muslims in the first place. And that's why they're the victims, because they were never Muslims in the first place.
No, actually, I asked
And
whether
in
the
the
Urukai.
West, they are
Sorry.
victims. Sorry,
I was actually asking
go
whether
on.
the Urukai were also victims.
The Urukai are victims of, first of all, they're victims of the ideology, aren't they? In first and foremost, these are victims of the ideology, Muslims. No child grows up wanting to be other human beings. That is not the natural inclination of human beings. Though, as we just mentioned before the show started, schools in Pakistan are actually processing an infant, not so much of infancy stage, but certainly just above toddler age, the mentality of decapitating those who insults the prophet. Yeah, and I
No, I
think we both
wasn't
agree
talking
that,
about
that's
Muslims.
something that we've both come across today.
I was not talking about Muslims. I wanted to know
Oh,
whether the
what were you
Urukai
talking
see
about?
themselves as victims.
No, the Urukai don't see themselves as victims.
Oh, okay,
They
that
see
is what
themselves
that
as
is.
champions.
Okay, all right. Okay, glad we sorted that out. Okay, Rob, welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. How's it going this beautiful Friday evening?
Good evening to yourself and Thunderous. Good evening to the audience. Yeah, pretty much all good. Watched a couple of Muslim videos, and you and I have had a look in there, and I've got something in the Discord, so you can have a look. There's a bit of a chat going on there. It is fascinating to say the least, but we've got some interesting stuff tonight, so let's get to it.
Yeah, a lot of things have happened. It's really, it is amazing. Okay, this is the Gin and Tonic Show, and maybe I should make a video of this and just sort of push the button and make it as quickly as possible. You know, like if you
Yeah, that'd be a
take
good
this
idea,
medicine,
like
do
1 minute.
consult a doctor if you feel anything like really fast. Okay, what we do is we help Muslims and non-Muslims alike to understand and handle Islam in the 21st century. Not by attacking, which is aggressive, destructive, and antagonistic, but by critiquing, by asking questions, and by refuting false claims, presenting the reality of Islam, which in our case is the political Islam. If you want to join us, you can comment during the live show in the chat. You can join us on the panel if you have a particular question or contribution that you're making, or you can go and watch the stream as an archive function later on. We are decent human beings. We look at the Quran. We live stream to YouTube and Facebook. if you want to say something, but you don't want to be recorded, because these are later going, of course, to Facebook and YouTube. If you don't want that, but you still want to discuss something, you have the opportunity, because we have a Discord server where you can do this privately, which is not recorded, not by us anyway. So those are the ways. Everything here you see is perfectly, totally, utterly free. What we do is we look at different segments in a show where we have this opening statement, where we have some news, some crazy comments, and we look at the Quran, and we look at the theme of the month, which we're still stuck with Dawah in action. Then, of course, we have the Hadith in closing. So that is the structure. That is the way that it works. Let's go to the first segment, which is the news. I've collected only two things, which is a Muslim guy in France, and I think we're going to be talking about France a little bit later today, tells France, a Muslim tells the country of France, the authorities in France, what is to be taught in French schools. Because Mohamed Moussayou, the president of the French Islamic Council, the Conseil Français du Culte Musulman, he says that he does not wish, he does not wish cartoons and caricatures of Prophet Muhammad to be distributed in French schools, and said that plans to do so showed a willingness to deliberately offend Muslims. So a cleric tells a government what they are allowed to do in their schools and what not. I mean, just the arrogance.
Using the freedom of speech that they wouldn't grant other people to make claims that which they're entitled to do, that everybody should ignore. And if he were put to debate, or we brought him in here, he'd be stripped bare and be running for the hills. But, that's the sort of narrative that you can push out there because you're allowed to do it. And I support his right to talk nonsense. But again, we shouldn't take that sort of vacuous claim seriously. So, and I think you're just reading it to show the absurdity of it, which is a good thing, really.
Yeah. For me, this is crazy. For me, this is... Now, people have been telling us, look, if there's like 2% Muslims, they'll be quiet and they will have their modest demands. If it's 5%, it starts increasing. Now, we're talking 10% here in France. And look already what is happening. Now, I shudder to think if this goes up to 20%. What happens if you have 20 or even 30% Muslims in a country? They're going to bloody well take over the whole place. They're going to be like Trump, how one guy can bring down an entire country just talking shit and saying, I want it my way. And this is exactly what the Muslims are doing. They say, look, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that because we feel offended. Well, if you fucking feel offended, you're free to feel offended. I don't care. Nobody cares whether you feel offended. You can do so. If you choose to be offended, that is your problem and not ours.
It's a subjective claim. And I heard Hitchens say it as well. I just happened to come across a Hitchens video again where somebody had kept his quotes and stuff like that. And he sort of said, well, when somebody says they're offended, he says, I'm just waiting for the argument.
Yeah, true. Yes, that's what I was so confused.
I think you're all missing the trick as well, because I've said this many times before, that everything else you can lash out with impunity, because there's no retaliation towards it. But the retaliation from Islam is very real. People die, for what Muhammad used the term, or Allah used the term in the Quran as a mischief. There's a lot of ambiguity about what can or what constitutes offence. I harken back to the 1990s when the Miss World was in Nigeria taking place, and somebody said that Muhammad would have had at least one of his wives, and riots ensued and 18 people died. So the reality is there as to what constitutes in Islam an offence in Islam, but the threat's getting very much real now, and that's the reality that's there. So how do you combat this force that is not just gaining political traction, but it's gaining traction in areas where the population is growing as well? And you've already given into so much given so much ground and territory to them via the protection of rights and free speech and things like that, that it's difficult to try and pull it back now.
Yeah, that's true. This is good. What we need to understand is there's not a shred of evidence that Muhammad actually existed, okay, the way that it's described in the Sunnah. So we need to be, all of us, we need to be cautious when we're looking at the stories of and around Muhammad. They could be just made up. There is this possibility. So what people are saying is, well, I love Cinderella more than I love my wife, and therefore if you say anything about Cinderella, I will have to kill you. This is how absurd this whole thing is. And we need to really put it that hard, and we need to really, really draw this comparison exactly the way that I have just done it. Because this is a real possibility.
Maybe then maybe people say when they're drawing cartoons and when they're making comments and mockery is that we're mocking the Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, the one that we think didn't exist. We're not mocking the one that did exist, because you believe the one that did exist. We're mocking the one that didn't exist.
Exactly. So you can make a cartoon
Maybe
of
that would be a
Cinderella.
tactic.
You can say Cinderella was quite naive and gullible, that she fell for the stories that the sisters and the stepmother and everybody told her. So if I make a cartoon about Cinderella, are Cinderellists, I don't know, are they going to come out in droves and try and kill me just because I made a cartoon of Cinderella? I don't think so. So
Presuming that most epics president is, what's his name? Trudeau. I think that's the only one I've heard of, at least in the West, that said that sort of thing. So I'm going to presume...
The reason it said that it is not allowed not to be offended. What?
So it's allowed to be offended.
Meaning
He's using
being
double
offended is a
negative.
right.
Yeah.
And aftermath of free speech, censorship is not allowed. Absolutely, yeah, I agree. Exactly. So, yeah, if you want to... it is your right to be offended, exactly.
Yeah, well, this all goes back. It's been a growing pattern ever since the Satanic Verses list, and people didn't, if you like, notice it then, or they ignored it then, or they didn't take notice. However you want to put it, the Satanic Verses with Salman Rushdie was the flag that was raised that people have ignored, and this is where you've got to now with people like me, who've grown up in the community, that have said that these things will happen. I've likened them to the football fans, the football hooligan fans of England in the 1970s and the 80s. I said this is exactly what they're like, and where it is now is where people like me have said it's going, and it's only going to get worse, not better. And the interesting thing is, I think a lot of this hysteria that has been deliberately, if you like, heightened and incited could well be an deliberate emotional response by certain leading figures in certain communities to galvanize the Muslim Brotherhood in light of the information against Islam that's been coming out in the past, say, year, 18 months. To make them forget about that, forget about the logic, and get back on the emotion.
Well, that's all what it's all about, is the emotion. There's no facts at all. Now, and what is good is that Trump at the moment is being kept in check. So this populist movement maybe is getting a bit of a damper. So maybe it's going to be a little bit more realistic in the future. I don't know. I just know that it became very popular to go with Trump because 4 years ago people thought, let's give it a try and maybe it's worth it, blah, blah, blah. But by now they should have known that this was a failed experiment. But it brought up this feeling or this idea that being a populist is quite okay, which I think it is not. So maybe this is stopping. So people like Erdogan, people like Kim Jong-un and those people, I hope they're also going to go a little bit down if rational, logical standards are being applied. So that you don't have somebody like Trump running after them and saying, oh, Putin, I love you so much, and Kim Jong-un sent me a love letter and things like that. So I'm hoping for some reason. Because in Turkey, the lira trades at a record low as geopolitical tensions weigh. Now, the Turkish economy, which was bought artificially by Erdogan to keep the people happy, and now this growth is dipping. So the lira crisis darkens the whole outlook. And Erdogan has hidden this economic disaster by always taking money from the banks. So it's actually hidden in the Turkish banks. So he's issued bonds from the banks and taken money and with this has bought stuff to keep the economy running. And Turkey is now in serious trouble because the collapsing lira, they're running out of options. So Turkish president, this Recep Tayyip Erdogan, last week he called for Turks never to buy French goods and urged European leaders to halt French leader Emmanuel Macron's anti-Islam agenda. Now, this is just a diversion tactic to deflect public opinion away from the internal difficulties. So this is, I think, why he's so, adamant that everybody goes after France, which a lot of people are doing at the moment. There's some comments which we're going to see later, which sort of mirror this thing.
But
hello, we welcome Smartcat who's joined us. Welcome to
but that doesn't make
Gin and Tonic.
sense.
Hello, gentlemen.
The metal voice. Sorry, Islam
Hi.
creates Urukai.
Does that make? I was going to say, but that doesn't make sense, because if you've got the Muslim world boycotting French products, I did hear that the other day, and I thought to myself, well, what French products are the Muslim world going to avoid? They don't drink alcohol,
French
so
wine.
that's out the window. That's not going to hurt. French wine, but it's mostly alcoholic. They can't take the, they can get the unalcoholic. They don't drink alcohol, so the French wine is not going to be affected that much. They don't drink, they probably have their own cooks making their own croissants and that. They don't import them from France. Most of the perfumes have alcohol in them, so that's not going to be too much of a hit on the French economy. So what French products do the Muslim world consume apart from Peugeots and Renaults?
Well, the biggest supply chain is Carrefour. There's nowhere in the Middle East where you could go without suddenly bumping into a Carrefour. So the French are very active in the Middle East. So it's not just bicycles and cars, but it's retail as well. So there's supermarkets. There's a whole there's a lot happening in Astra. But I'm wondering how many Muslims actually know this. I don't know that this is French. I don't know how they're going to do this. Maybe they're going to boycott tomatoes or something. Well, big deal.
I think the idea is to boycott anything that says "Made in France."
Yeah, I think it's just a political statement. I don't think it's going to have any economic effect as such. But it's just there to make a statement. Yeah, we're boycotting you because you are allowing free speech. And the funny thing is that a lot of Muslims are saying Macron himself has insulted Prophet Muhammad, but he didn't. All he said is we are not going to interfere with what newspapers and magazines are printing. That's all that he does. And people have to understand that we will not tolerate radical Islam in France, and that's it. Now, if you are, I don't know, if you want to bring radical Islam into France, well, then you have a problem. This is true. But now to go and tell everybody to boycott French goods, I mean, it's a bit stupid. Anyway, so, yeah.
Well, he is trying to boycott. Well, sorry, Macron and the French Republic is trying to ban the Grey Wolves, and the Grey Wolves are painted as an Islamist organization, which they're not. If people are familiar with Turkish politics.
No, I don't. I've never heard of Grey Wolves. I've never heard of this. Okay, then let's go to the next segment, which, as you can see, is Krazy Komments. Now, there's been a video, and Rob actually alerted me to this, where a Muslim guy speaks about evolution, but not like Sabur, not just throwing around comments. excuse me, but he actually talks about it, and he says, look, there are certain aspects with science that are simply true, and we need to live with it. He makes some really crazy comments as well. He doesn't take a stand for or against. He just says, well, maybe we should, and there's some anyway. So a lot of people have criticized this because he is not condemning evolution outright, but he is trying to merge it with Islam and say, listen, maybe we should start thinking about this. And this did not go down well with Muslims. Now, this Adil Iqbal, I've got two of his comments, said, don't agree with this Abu Aliyah. He is trying to propose that some aspects of evolution are done and dusted facts, which, of course, they are. And he says this is a very dangerous statement. He needs to be more clear on this. Now, I don't understand what is dangerous about this. This is a fact. It's reality. How can reality be dangerous if all you're doing is you're saying, okay, this is what happens? That's not dangerous.
It's obviously dangerous. Stops, but it's dangerous if you have a counter narrative that doesn't have the facts.
Exactly.
So that's where it's dangerous.
Okay.
But
That's
in actual fact,
yeah.
this guy listened to this, and I think this guy, because I listened to this thing as well, and I sent it to you. This Abu guy seemed to make, at least superficially, contradictory statements, because he did say that certain parts of evolution are a fact, some others are questionable, blah blah. But he was very it was very high level. There was nothing substantive about what those specifically were. But then when it got to 45 minutes, so there was a preamble, and when it got to 45 minutes, that's of course where he dropped the ball or the bomb, if you like, saying, hey, we can accept macroevolution, which is as I understand it, is more religious term. This was coined probably by Discovery Institute and that lot. As far as I'm aware, it's not used in academia and certainly not by any normal person who speaks about evolution. But he dropped the ball in this following sense. He says, yes, we can accept macroevolution with three conditions. One, if the overwhelming evidence for speciation is shown, although we have to rule out humans. That was basically his statement. Number two, that Allah is driving speciation, and more precisely, every single atom. So it cannot be through natural selection. It can't be natural selection. It has to be through Allah's divine course, and following on from that cause and effect cannot be separated from Allah, that shirk, and so he has to be in control of cause and effect. So in other words, this is all Allah's will, and you could let them have the points 2 and 3. You could let them have 2 and 3 in their own way, but one just torpedoes the whole idea. The moment they claim that, you can accept speciation except for humans, they're done, right? And this was his whole attempt, to give them a long explanation about evolution, and some of it was accurate statements that is acceptable, but they're trivial statements, so it's things that you would learn anyway. But then when it got down to whether it conflicts with Islam, we went through these 3 points, and of course the first point just blew his whole thing out of the water. But in the very beginning of the conversation, he was talking about how there's certain things about evolution that are demonstrable facts and nobody can deny it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. He didn't say what it was. So that's why I kept listening until we got to the 45-minute part where he wanted to then answer the first question, which was, how do we square this with Islam? And at that point it was, we have to accept these. So we're not going to accept evolution as it's understood. We're going to have our own version of it. And if it meets these, which is really just Allah's version of evolution, well, then we can accept it. Well, cool. You accept that, but then don't call it evolution. Just call it Allah's divine will or something like that. Because otherwise you're being intentionally, intentionally misrepresenting evolution, because evolution doesn't talk about any supernatural events. And so, the moment you use that word evolution, you're confusing lay people or people who aren't paying attention, and you shouldn't be doing that. I wish we could get him on the show here. We wouldn't need the 45-minute preamble. We just get to the rubber meets the road, and there we can just get him to admit, if he's intellectually honest, that you cannot square the two. And once he does that, everything else is just sophistry.
What I found interesting is that he very clearly said we have to differentiate between a theory that is a layman's theory and a scientific theory. And there he explained that a theory is the highest level of a description that you can get in science. And this I found very refreshing, I must admit, because this I haven't heard.
Yeah, but most people who have taken the time know that, Stop. So again, to me, that's a trivial statement. I understand to some of his Muslim brethren who are listening, they're mightily ignorant about that. But to anybody else, I mean, that's a trivially true statement. It's not something that we go, wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing that he said that. It's normal, right? We would accept somebody to say that if they had an understanding of it. That's what I
look
meant
at
by
this guy.
trivial, right? But I guess to the Muslims it wasn't. But I was like listening for something. I'm going, okay, is there something I can disagree with? Or is he making a substantive statement that would be hugely problematic to his brethren? And this comment seems to suggest that's the case. But actually, he didn't go down into the weeds about it anyway, so he can sort of hold his head up or avoid some of this criticism by saying, well, I didn't go into the whole thing live with you guys. I'll do that in private or something like that.
Okay, because this guy says theory and science is actual fact because it's been tested rigorously. Question, question, question. Most scientific theories are not like this. Come on, Abulia. Why are you putting
No.
science on a pedestal?
Yeah, but I mean,
So
okay,
this
but this
guy
guy's a
doesn't
bit.
understand it.
Sure, but he's a bit of an ignoramus, so we can't expect that,
Yeah, of course.
that the ignoramuses like this are going to understand that, right? Scientific theory, as is commonly understood, is a collection, a body of facts that has been rigorously tested and well accepted, like, general relativity. There's an uncontroversial one, hopefully, for most people, even if you're a theist. General relativity is uncontroversial in that sense, and that's rigorously tested, and that's a scientific theory. And, so some theists don't accept evolution, but the banner theory still applies to that. Now, there might be a pushback there, not in the scientific community, but more in the layperson community, but that same label applies. And so obviously this guy doesn't know that, and so he doesn't know what a scientific theory is, as opposed to, hey, I've got a theory that the sun will rise tomorrow. And you're right, that's what this sheikh did explain. And again, to me, that's totally uncontroversial. That's like you're just telling somebody something that's like trivially basic.
Yeah, but not for this guy. This is the
Clearly
whole point. For you and me, yes. But there are Muslims who simply do not accept this, who will still say, well, a theory is a theory and not a fact, because this is what Zakir Naik says. So they believe this. And this is why, for me, it was refreshing to have a Muslim who said, no, hang on, a theory and science is different. And this was the good news for me anyway. So it's a small step in the right direction, okay? So, yeah, I appreciate that. I learned a lot from this stream, and definitely Brother Awadia is very knowledgeable. And now comes the thing, but am I the only one who thinks that they had to have an Islamic scholar on the panel? Because I saw that part of the Islamic explanation was more of a personal opinion.
Well, which part? The three rules that he had, or something else?
I don't
What was
know.
he talking about?
But for me, the funny part, this is why I put this in here, is that if you're talking about evolution, biological, scientific evolution, all right, and he says they need to have an Islamic scholar there, okay? Now, they had 3 Muslims there who were just sitting and watching, but I don't understand why, if you're having a discussion on biology, why do you need to have an Islamic scholar on the panel? Because it's obvious for these people, it needs to have a counterpart that ropes it in when it gets too wild, like saying a theory is really true. Oh my God, no, we can't have that. The Islamic scholar should go and say, well, science always changes and we can't trust it. And only when it's good for us, then we accept it, otherwise we reject it. So for me, this is exactly, they are demanding somebody who is dishonest to give them an opinion they like to hear. Not because
I'm
it's
not sure
accurate, correct, or anything. No.
Well, I think it's maybe a step to say dishonest, right? Because dishonest would mean that he knows what he's saying is a lie. And a lot of them are so ignorant they don't know this. They actually believe what they're saying is true. So they're profoundly mistaken. I think we could say that clearly. Unless, of course, you've got evidence that he knows what he's saying is false,
Yes.
and he's still saying it anyway.
Well, okay,
That would be different.
not this particular person, but I know a lot of Muslims who know exactly the difference between a layman's and a scientific theory, and who still prefer to say, well, in science everything changes, so it's just a theory. They are
Yeah, okay. So if somebody
knowingly
can demonstrate
saying
they know that, then obviously that's dishonest. But I mean, this sheikh guy basically put his cards on the table. That they
Yeah.
can accept some form of speciation as long as there's lots of evidence, according to him.
But
But
not
humans
the
are
human
ruled out. So,
ones. Yeah.
but if humans are ruled out, it's not evolution anyway. So at that point, we can stop talking about anything else. At that point, you're done. So everything else was a nice sort of, to me, trivial education points for 45 minutes. But at that point, the cards were on the table and we're done. So even whether others driving every single molecule, which would deny free will. But again, if he was on the panel here, we would take him to task, right? But he's there lecturing and they're all sort of just listening without saying a word because they don't know any better and they haven't got anything to push back on because they just don't have that. But, we could push back on all of them. But even after point one, you're done in terms of trying to, reconcile the two. Once you put forward point number one, anything else, as long as he, Mr. Sheikh, you acknowledge that you cannot reconcile at that point there you've put up the white flag for reconciliation. It's done for you. They're in conflict when you made that number one point. Number two and number three we can talk about, and I can tell you why that's incredibly problematic for you. But in terms of the main theory that you are trying to, reconcile, you're done with point number one. So it took all this time, but to me that was immediately. So this guy's objection, I'm not sure that it's well-founded if he was paying attention. He should have gone, okay, well, he said some things that I'm not comfortable with, but he accepted that humans can't evolve. And to them, that's the most important part. They can accept everything else because, the Quran doesn't explicitly speak about those other things. But as soon as you deny human evolution as a Quranic point of view, then you can't accept evolution.
And this is the typical sort of attitude that I see with 90% of all Muslims. I don't agree with the Sheikh's approach. We Muslims don't have to treat evolution as a fact and bend our understanding to suit it. It's still a theory with a lot of gaps. And this is the approach you see everywhere. And it shows that they're not really willing to understand. They're not really willing to change their mind. They're not really willing to accept and say, all right, well, we have reality and therefore we need to go with it. No. They are saying we accept science as long as it sort of corresponds with the Quran, and otherwise we have to reject it, and that's it.
I think that's the main point, right? Yeah.
We accept science as long we accept science as long as it's a self-affirming principle. As long as
well, that's obviously cherry picking. That's a cherry picking and special pleading, conflated in one. But I think.
I don't think that's
comment.
I don't think that's accurate for all Muslims. I think there's a certain strata of the Muslim community that that we're talking about and we're critiquing them, but I don't think they're representative of the vast majority of Muslims in that line of thinking.
Smart Cat, do you know any single Muslim on earth that accepts evolution, which includes common descent, and denies that Adam and Eve was a miracle event? Do you know any Muslim that accepts that?
No, I don't know any Muslim that accepts that.
No, me neither. I would wager if there's a handful of them, they're not true Muslims. They're denying the Quran.
Exactly.
And that's the point, right? But I think what Detective Inspector Monkfish is saying in this comment, I think is a good point, right? It makes more sense for them to reject it entirely because what they're trying to do is reconcile the two and say, well, we'll accept all of this because we really, really like science. So we'll go as far as science takes us as long as it doesn't conflict with the Quran. But I think it's more intellectually honest to say, no, we reject evolution because other speciation isn't really important and humans are the main one. But we can't single out humans because we've no good reason to do that other than appealing to a miracle.
Yeah, but this is what I was trying to say. Just because the vast majority of Muslims may reject evolution, they don't reject science in its entirety.
Well, they should. If they're intellectually honest, they should. How can you cherry pick the bits that you want and deny the other bits when you don't have any good reasons to do so?
Well, I mean, because you can deny evolution and it won't affect your life. You can't deny mathematics because you won't be able to fly planes. You understand?
Yeah, but that's just cherry picking, right? That's to me is intellectually disingenuous. I'd respect a Muslim more if he just said to me, I'd respect him for being consistent if he just said to me, I accept the Quran, I have faith in the Quran, I reject science because it goes against the Quran, or at least some of it does. And if some of it does, I can't cherry pick, so I'm going to deny science and go with the Quran. And the science that is true is obviously something that isn't put forward in the Quran, and I'm just going to accept the Quran and take it on faith.
Does anybody own a monopoly on science or the scientific method? I'm just curious. No, nobody. That's a rhetorical question.
Well, people that are intellectually consistent do accept it, right? They would quote own it.
No, I said, sorry. Well, no, that's what I'm. No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that the science and scientific method, and people who are disciples in scientific fields, they learn from that thing. They invest from these scientific fields.
There's no
right? They become
disciples.
professionals from these things.
There's no disciples
I mean, what
in
is
science.
it? What do I mean by disciples? No, what do I mean by a disciple? I mean a student. You got to disciple means student. I mean, I'm not taking it from like a religious standpoint of disciple, but I'm saying student. But the thing that I'm trying to say, Rob, is why there's so many people that don't accept evolution is because it's a non-consequential. It may be facts, but it's non-consequential for an individual to reject it or to accept it.
Well, not really, because it's the basis of medicine and a great deal of medical science that helps people today, right, with viruses and various other things. So you can't really reject it. A layperson can reject it because they don't know its implications. But if you know the implications, you can't really reject it in that sense. But if you're going to reject that, why not reject the idea that the Earth is an oblate spheroid? Because the Quran seems to make it very clear that it's a flat Earth, and that has profound implications.
Well,
there's like feedback as well. Sparkcat, have you got headphones? Because I can hear myself on your
okay.
computer or phone.
Okay, so all right, hold up.
But I don't want to start a discussion on evolution now.
Yeah, sure.
I'll just mute myself when you guys are speaking. This is the easiest way.
Okay.
Yeah, I think SmartCat's point is that he wants to accept. Stops. I think SmartCat's point is that he thinks that Muslims can accept some science because it's undeniable and reject others because it doesn't have an impact in their lives. And I'm suggesting that it does have an impact. They just not aware of it. But also, you either accept something that is a well-established scientific fact across the board, or you don't. But to half do it, I think, is disingenuous. And especially once you understand what the implications are, you're not in a position to do that anymore.
Well, you have Christian apologists who go and say, well, we have microevolution, which is, just the development within dogs or within horses or whatever. But you can't see any macroevolution. They don't understand, though, that many steps of microevolution actually results in macroevolution. This is why they're shooting themselves in the foot, because they don't understand it. So bringing up these terms has actually proven to be a disservice. But they didn't understand that in the beginning. And I think the Muslims are making the same mistake at the moment, where they are trying to, this is like what I call the mafia method: admit only what you cannot or can no longer deny at all. Only accept those things which really you cannot avoid anymore. But in the long term, you cannot do that. You can't go along with that. And this is why they need to, and this is why I think this guy is wrong. You have to treat evolution as a fact, and you have to let go of Adam and Eve as a literal
they can't do that, Stops.
Yeah, okay, but they have to somehow. They have to go and rewrite the Quran to accept this.
Well, they're not going to. So I think, and the more you point it out, the better. But we can talk about this for a whole another hour. I think we're going to want to get to. And by the way, Ansar's going to come on, so I've invited him anyway to come on so that he can give feedback on the video that we'll do later.
This guy says, he asks a question, why do people have misconceptions about Islam and its prophet and the book? And the answer is because the media is misleading people. This is the answer. And this is a really crazy comment to push everything on the media. The media is just reporting what they see and what people want to hear. That's it. The media does not suddenly invent evolution or something like this. This is not the way that it works. The media just says, look, this is what happens. And granted, a lot of times they sensationalize, they exaggerate, they pad, they do all sorts of things, absolutely. But you can't just palm this off on the media and say, well, the media is to blame and that's why we Muslims have a hard time.
The question to ask is, what are the misconceptions that he claims are being made?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sure.
I accept that the media lie. I accept that the media exaggerate and that the media have an agenda or a narrative. I can accept all that, no problem. But I won't accept it against Islam. The reason being, the texts have to be there to justify, and do the text exist to justify the imagery that we see about in Islam? And I'm afraid in Islam's case, it does. For instance, if we see beheadings of cartoons of Jesus, for instance, and it was allegedly people of a Christian denomination going out doing these things, I think the most obtuse person, the stupidly perverse, or the most hopelessly ignorant would be able to look at the Bible and say, that's not justified. That is not Christianity. Even an atheist, like an agnostic or an evolutionist, whatever, will be able to look at the Bible and say, actually, I'm looking at the Bible and beheading people is not in there. You can't find it. You can't even put, somehow, use some kind of ambiguous statement to justify that kind of action. But we do not find that with Islam. When we see this wickedness taking place, we can actually go to the sources. We can look at the ideology and manifesto of Allah. We look at the life course of Muhammad, and we see the very things that we're seeing in the media. So you can't say it's propaganda or hysteria against the religion. We see from the text that these things are actually made manifest during the lifespan of Muhammad and thereafter. And the thing is, another thing as well in all this, isn't there a certain irony that on every continent on Earth, whether it's Asia or Australasia, Africa, China, America, South America, or Europe, people are understanding Islam the wrong way every time, exactly the same. Does that not say anything either? That Islam is being misunderstood exactly the same way all over the earth. The manifestation of Muslim communities and their attitude of not wanting to integrate in society is manifest everywhere in the world in exactly the same way.
It's a conspiracy.
That should say something as well. I agree. I accept conspiracies do exist. They do. But in this sense, even if it was, the point I'm trying to make, Stops, is even if it was a conspiracy, you still have the text in the Quran and the Hadith to say, well, even if it was a conspiracy, the text still say to do these things. The text is still there.
Yeah,
anyway.
no, I understand
That's
your
the
point,
point.
and I totally agree. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, can I say a few things?
Talk.
Okay. When Muslims do good things, they attribute it to their texts as well. And it seems some Muslims, when they do bad things, they attribute it to their texts as well. But the Muslims who do acts of good cannot reconcile with the Muslims that do acts of evil. They say this is not a reflection of my religion, but they're citing when they do something good, when they forgive, for example, the murderer of their son, or they donate to charity, or they try to alleviate the suffering of other people, or they do acts of good things that we all can recognize as good things. They will remember God's verses and Muhammad's hadith, right? And when we see Muslims committing acts of terrorism, they will say, I am justified using these verses and using these hadiths. Let's say that for the sake of argument, that they do in fact say that stuff. All right. What I'm trying to say is this is a double-edged sword argument, because the good Muslims will justify their actions from Allah and the Messenger the same way that so what I'm trying to say is this is not indicative, because the Muslims that do acts of compassion, who remember God as a compassionate Lord, who remember God and the Messenger as the compassionate Prophet, they cannot reconcile with the ones that commit acts of evil. They don't recognize these people as members of their community. And the funny thing is, the ones that go around saying, kill the infidels. Well, hold on one second. The funny thing is, the ones that go around killing quote-unquote infidels look at the Muslims that are inactive in their perspective as not real Muslims. So, this is a double-edged sword. Yes, I'll let you say something.
Right, the thing is, you're saying about the Muslims that do charity. We want us to bear in mind, when we look at the world over, the only charity Muslims are prepared to give are for other Muslim communities. They're not prepared to give or do any kind of charity that benefits the kuffar. We see this, whereas the kuffar, okay, that is to say anyone that's non-Muslim, do provide for the Muslim world via certain charities. I mean, when you look at, say, organizations that are set up for relief, whether it's a famine relief, whether it's some kind of relief because an earthquake has taken place, you find they are all non-Muslim organizations. We do not find Muslim organizations that are set up as charities to help the kuffar. This is because in the Quran, Allah himself says that if you make friends with Jews and Christians, you are like them. You are a hypocrite. So you're saying about charity, but those very charities only befit or benefit Muslim communities. Second of all, when a Muslim does do good, and he only does good what for himself, that's in what sense you're saying good? Because you're saying charity. Can you give an example, right, of a charity that a Muslim has set up or a Muslim organization has set up that non-Muslims benefit from? Can you name one?
No, I won't name one because I'll tell you why. The rule is to benefit your community. The only exception from
the
that
community, the context of community in Islam is the Muslim community. It is not a community where you find Jews, Hindus, Christians, and atheists. As far as community is concerned in Islamic ascension, it is only Muslims.
Just give me a minute. All right. From what I've seen, the Christians have a very good tradition in going into other people's communities and helping poor people who are suffering, people who need medical. We see this in Africa and Latin America, even though Latin America is 90% Christian. But Christians do have a strong tradition in going into other people's communities and providing services. But the rule is, around the world, most organizations benefit members of their organizations or their community. This is from time immemorial. So don't be like, oh, Muslims are stingy or something. No.
No. It's not about stinginess. No, the point that I think Thunder is trying to make here is that the charities that Muslims set up are more geared towards other Muslims, whereas Christians are not exclusively donating only to Christians.
This is not entirely true. Like I said,
I didn't say it is entirely true. I said it is more geared up towards that.
But that's okay. Listen, let me give a few points to where the point.
But we're talking about something that is way off topic at the moment.
No, because Thunderous he likes to remember the wickedest members of the Muslim community and superimpose them on the entirety of the Muslim community. And I don't see a logical reason for him to do that other than to demonize Muslim people as a whole, to legitimize their blood and disenfranchisement. That's the only reason why I see Thunderous keep mentioning the same rhetoric that Muslims are bad and evil and they're out to kill every non-Muslim on the planet because their God and their messenger can.
No, the ideology is Allah and Muhammad's ideology. Allah and Muhammad's ideology is.
No.
Allah's,
okay, don't explain it again.
Muhammad's ideology is set out to kill everybody. That's in the Quran.
Okay, Smart Cat, do you have an example? He asked, do you have an example of a charity?
No, it's not about the charity. I'm not trying to wrestle people about the charity. This is what I was trying to say. Look, I'll give recognition where recognition is due. Christian organizations, for at least the past 300 years, have a strong tradition of helping non-Christians. This is absolutely true, 100%. I kiss their forehead and I thank them very much. But the rule is, for as long as I can remember, in every society, in every community, you look after your own. This is what? This is not Muslim exclusive. Hindus take care of Hindus. Jews take care of Jews. For the longest time, Christians.
You've made your point.
For the longest time, Christians took care of Christians, except for the last 300 years. This is not radical. Give respect where respect is due. Christians have a great tradition of charity, but that doesn't say Muslims don't. Either.
It's not about charity. Let's just leave it. We'll just disagree and that's it. Finished. I don't want to go down for 1 hour now discussing the different concepts of charity. Let's go to the next one. This was a girl who said, okay, I joined Islam and here are things that I learned. And she says, well, a lot of people are saying, I cannot be a Muslim because I like dogs. I want to keep my dog and this is my baby and I cannot be a Muslim because Muslims are not allowed to keep dogs. Now, she says this is not true. She says, yes, you can keep dogs. Now, the funny thing is, we have a discrepancy here because, again, the hadith say, and it's very clear that Muhammad, on the one hand, says if you have a dog and you see it like it's thirsty, give it water. On the other hand, he says any dog that is not useful for hunting or whatever, kill it. And all dogs were killed.
Yeah.
So there are, again, contradictions in the different hadith. Yes.
Okay,
it's Nessie or whatever.
Blondish haired girl, right? Okay.
Yes.
I saw one of her videos earlier this year. My first reaction to her was very much like when I see people like Linda Sawa go to Saudi Arabia and make that statement. It's easy to sit in a non-Muslim country and make statements like that, and you're probably saying it just to get a load of subscribers so you can earn money off YouTube. Now go to Saudi Arabia and make sure it's a one-way ticket and write your will.
I was very butthurt because I made like a really structured response, which was very long. I spent like nearly half an hour on this one video, and it was merely deleted. So I was quite upset about that. Anyway, so this guy says, I would not keep your dog in my house because if the dog touches anything by mouth, then that thing becomes haram and dirty. If the dog touches your clothes with mouth, then you can't pray with the same clothes on. So there's this old ancient whatever superstition about dogs, about the saliva of dogs that is not allowed to touch you, otherwise you become unclean. And this is again a thing where yes, it is true.
Can I say something else?
If you let your dog lick an open wound, there are bacteria, or there can be bacteria in cats and dogs that can harm you. Absolutely. But this is not the point. It's the point about the hadith where Muhammad said, no, if he doesn't like dogs, kill them.
Okay, I'll let Thunderous go first because he seems to want to. I want to say something.
Also, bear in mind that Muhammad said that three things annul a man's prayer when they walk in front of him: a donkey, a dog, and a woman. So, if a dog or a donkey walks in front of a man while he's praying, it annuls his prayer.
Yes. Smart cat?
Yeah, I was gonna say. Dogs, have. If you find a dog in the wild, it's a scavenger. It's like almost like a hyena. It's like a wild dog, right? So, a domesticated dog is a little bit different, but I think it's treated as a pest. It's looked at as a pest. Like a rat. Something that will eat your livestock if you don't deal with it properly. So and there's also like a lot of Muslim superstition about dogs, but traditionally Muslims don't keep dogs in the house if it doesn't have a utilitarian purpose. Where there's an actual useful purpose for the dog, you shouldn't keep one. And then
that's the point.
And that's culturally different from the West, where they consider man's best friend to be a dog, which I find funny. But, that's just a cultural difference that the Western people have to, reconcile with.
And this is what this guy is confirming, because there's this superstition about dogs in the house and that's it.
Yeah, but I don't think that superstition comes from nowhere. I think it's a practical superstition.
I don't think there is such a thing. Anyway, we're now going towards France. Now we've heard what happened. This whole thing, the latest story, incident, whatever, was kicked off by a history teacher, who was showing people in his class the history of France and how come that France has free speech. And as an example, he pulled up some cartoons and said, here in France we're allowed to show this. Saudi Arabia, you're not. So different history, different whatever. And a Muslim girl saw this, and she went to her father and was shocked, and the father then organized some people and told them and blah blah blah. So they killed the teacher, decapitated him, and then there was an outcry, and then Macron said, look, we're not going to interfere. And then other people were killed, and then somebody was killed in Marseille, somebody was killed in Nice, and there's a lot of stuff happening now in France. Where especially new immigrants that came to France recently are going apeshit and saying, no, you cannot insult Muhammad, and we've already talked about this. So now we have somebody who says the real criminal here is Macron. Okay, it's not the guy who killed the teacher. He's not the real criminal. No, Macron is the criminal.
Sorry, stop. Who's saying this? Who's saying this? Erdogan?
No. This is a guy with an Arab avatar.
Oh, okay. Continue.
So he writes as a comment, the real criminal here is Macron and his extreme speech against Islam. Now, he did not do anything. All Macron said is they will not allow violent Islamists to control the media and the schools in France. That's all that he said. So he didn't say anything against Islam. He didn't say anything extreme. He just said he will not interfere with free speech in France, that this is one of the cornerstones of France, and that's the way it will remain. That's all he did. But this guy says it's extreme speech against Islam, and every action will cause a reaction. So he's making it sound as though when Macron defends his country, this is seen as an action, and now they are justifying any kind of violent thing as a reaction. So he's trying to turn this around and saying the point that somebody killed somebody, let's ignore this. Let's start history only with the point where Macron is defending his country, and now turning it so that they are now justified in going crazy. So he says we should talk more about the root of the problem rather than dealing with external rashes. So that is amazing. So what we can expect to see now in the near future is more activities, more terrorism in France by Islamists, by whatever, Muslim terrorists or whatever you want to call them.
I find it very sad, that some segments, some Muslims in the Muslim community, the only time that they'll ever become politically active is when they feel like there has been an affront made onto their religion. I find that extremely sad, because usually these types of Muslims are extremely not active in any regard. They don't vote. They don't participate in any form of democracy. But no protest. You'll never see them at a protest or a charity event. But when somebody says something that they feel is offensive, they go apeshit, like you said. And this is not the type of Muslims that I think represent the vast majority of Muslims. I'm pretty certain of that. That's a fact.
Well,
and what France? I find it ironic. France. I mean, France once colonized Algeria and half of Africa, and it had a mighty army, and it was considered, like a country that's a country of action. And now, it seems like they're, I don't know, impotent. They have no ability to deal with this problem, And I think the French government has to bear some responsibility because they've encouraged this for so long.
What have they encouraged? The killing of teachers?
No, not the killing of teachers. You cannot tell me that no governmental official could have foreseen this, especially since France has a deep relation with the Muslim world,
But hang on. I don't understand. What are you saying? Are you saying France should roll over and say, okay, we will never talk about Muhammad. We will make a law now that prohibits anybody from mentioning Muhammad?
No. Obviously, I'm not saying that. Stop. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, why aren't they being more decisive? I want to see arrests. I want to see prosecutions. I want to see sheikhs who are preaching this stupidity to be arrested. Anybody advocating for this type of violence needs to be arrested. I don't think Macron or the French secular republic system has any teeth. It's being a paper tiger in this confrontation, and I want to see more action. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, let's see. Well, it gets even worse because people like this Hina, I think this must be a girl or something. I don't believe that the Muslim brother was the killer. He was standing there with the head of the teacher in his hand. And this person says, I don't believe that the Muslim brother was the killer. Because if it is the case, now this is logical thinking, okay? Why would the police kill the guy without even investigating with him? Look at the man who killed a lot of Muslims in New Zealand, and yet the police didn't kill him right away. And this macaroni is using Islam and Muslims in France to make excuses for his failure.
Can you update the thing you're reading from? Because we're still at the real criminal here is Macron.
Anyway, I thought this is a crazy comment. Then we have H.R. Soliman says, it seems to me that the speakers here worship the... the speakers here worship the British law by call the defense of our messenger a crime, knowing that that law contradicts the Sharia. They will seriously regret that on the day of judgment. This is just to highlight the haqq, which they are trying to bury. Now, what this guy is saying here is, it seems the speakers worship the British law. It's not British, it's French law, by calling the defense of our messenger a crime. So what he's saying is, killing a teacher, beheading a teacher, is defending our messenger.
Isn't that some apples, huh? This is unacceptable.
I mean, this is crazy. And of course it's a crime if you kill somebody. And there is no excuse calling it the defense of your messenger. It is still a crime. Your messenger is dead for 1,000 years. You can't defend him anymore, for crying out loud. Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, but stop.
Hang on.
You're forgetting the fact that Muhammad...
All I'm saying is these guys are not coming up with these amazing logical conclusions by themselves. There's these, there's these, I don't know. They're not coming up with these by themselves. There has to be a sheikh telling them this is the right thing. This is what we're expected to do. There's somebody preaching this behind closed doors. It's becoming part of the community, part of the zeitgeist of some communities in the Western world to think like this. And this is evidence of radicalization. I don't know what else you can call it. So
the defense of the messenger, you think, is a sort of a script now to justify anything? Interesting. Okay, Thunder, sorry.
I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd to say that I'm killing an individual, but I'm really defending the Prophet. It's absurd. It's like it's baffling. I don't know how you can make that.
That's why it's here in the Krazy Komments. Thunder, you said something?
What would Muhammad do? Muhammad killed his critics.
Muhammad would show forbearance. Muhammad would show forbearance. He'd be patient with his opposition.
Muhammad, please we're only going to go to the Hadith. We're only going to go to the Hadith to find Muhammad killed his critics. These people are radicals. These are purists. That's what they are. When will people, nobody, and this is what I find contemptible about this whole situation. Nobody wants to go to the Hadith and pull out the Hadith saying, well, these people are only doing what Muhammad did. This is what Muhammad ordered. That's the historical fact. And you get, with the greatest respect, you smart cat, you sound like a lovely guy. I'd like to go out for a beer with you, but you're not a Muslim and you don't speak for Islam. The Islamic texts are the final authority of what Islam really is. Hadith contradicts what's come out your mouth tonight, and the Quran contradicts what's come out your mouth tonight. I say that with the greatest respect, that anybody entry level 101 on Islamic text will say, you've said nothing that's in line with the God that you worship and the Prophet that you follow. And that's based on the texts.
No, Muhammad, he's never showed compassion to his opposition. He's never forgiven anybody that criticized him. He's destroyed his opposition masterfully. His opposition was annihilated. But when he entered Mecca, not a single person was killed. It was a bloodless conquering of Mecca. So I mean, you know, you want. This is what you want.
Okay, guys, please stop this. Please stop this. Don't get into the details. Who killed whom, how many times, by how many. The concept, we understand the concept. Thunder, Smart Cat, we understand the concept. Yes, they're following Muhammad, and that's it. We don't need to go how many people and who got killed by whom, at what time, and by whom, and so on. We don't need to do it. The concept is, yes, a lot of people got killed. Yes, when he went back to Mecca, nobody got killed, but then the people individually got killed. So that's it. That's what we know from the Hadith. That's what we know from the Seerah, and that's what we have to say. This is the way that it's presented to us. But we're talking about crazy comments of people here. And this is the way that it goes. These are Muslims who are voicing their opinion in comments to a video. And this guy says one can exercise the freedom of speech, in air quotes, with hate, lies, and slander, and we can't be offended. Now, what this is we're talking about facts. The people are talking about what we find in the Sunnah. And he calls this hate, lies, and slander. And we can't get offended. Okay? Then, one exercise their reaction with someone getting beheaded. Well, don't get offended too. So what he is saying is, we're not allowed to be offended if you come with hate, lies, and slander towards our Prophet. Well, then if we go and behead somebody as a punishment, you shouldn't get offended. It shows you the craziness of the thinking. We're beheading a guy who has done, I don't know, like I am an atheist. I will go in KSA in Riyadh. I will go on the street and say, okay, guys, there is no God and Muhammad didn't exist. Woof, I'm going to be beheaded. Now, I'm going to get killed. And he is saying this is the same thing as if somebody in France says, well, the Prophet made something crazy. I don't know. And this is the way that a lot of Muslims handle this. A lot of Muslims think like this. Okay, 3 to go. I'm crying like a river now. Oh, Allah, forgive us who can't defend our... And this is what Smart Cat actually said. We can't defend our beloved Prophet Muhammad, SAW, at our best. This is the narrative, and I'm starting to believe this, the narrative that is being drummed into them. It is all about the defense of their beloved Prophet. Unbelievable, and people are saying this is something that we need to accept, and that's it. And then this person says, don't be sad. These non-Muslims will know on the Day of Judgment who is Prophet Muhammad and his position. So they are threatening us with something just because we're saying something about Muhammad. So we're going to be like feeling exactly the punishment that we're going to feel. And then, of course, actually the best man in the world is Muhammad, PBUH. Just Google it and find out yourself. There we go. All right, finished, done. Rob, you've been awfully quiet.
Yeah, I think enough has been said on that. Are you going to do Quranic verses or go straight to the video?
I don't know if we should do because we've already spent an hour now on this. Okay, which video shall we do?
We do the one with Ansar and
Koran.
Hamza. So
Which one was this?
I can drive it, yeah.
Oh, okay. Then you drive it.
I'll share it here just so you've got a copy of it. Here it is in private chat so everybody can follow along. And it's in the comments as well for anybody that wants to watch it there. So Ansar, if you're listening, now would be a good time to join. I've given you the link in Facebook Messenger, so you're welcome to join there. So if I share screen here, and
so what we're doing is we are jumping one segment in the show, which after Krazy Komments is normally Quran, but we don't have time for that, so I'm going to postpone it for next week because otherwise we're going to run out of time. Because the Quran chapters are always interesting. This always takes a little bit of time. So what we're going to go is straight go to the Dawah in Action, which is the debate, don't hate. This was the initiative by our era, and then it was all about spreading hate anyway. So what we're going to do is comment on a video. And Ansar is not here yet. All right, you start it.
So if you join us when you're ready. Okay, so here we go. And we will just say something as it starts here. This is a 3-year-old video, so let's hope that both Ansar and Hamza, although I'm not sure Hamza has, but certainly I would imagine that, and if Ansar joins us, he might be able to tell us whether he's updated his views on certain parts of this.
Is this with the intro?
Yeah, it's a long one, so let me just get past the intro here to where it actually starts.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. And can knowing something be wrong?
Okay, So
I guess so, yeah.
we
Of course
we
you
have
can.
Ansar with us,
Right, yeah.
and
So, right,
Ansar is
I'll
the
tell
guy
you
on
what
the
I-
right-hand side, and he is with us. So if you want to make a comment or something, just shout so that Rob can hear you. If anybody in the chat wants to add something, ask something, comment something, just go one enter, one enter, one enter, so that I can see it, so that I can scream to Rob, wait a minute, so that we can stop it and see what's going on, okay?
Or the other way is just to do an @gin and tonic, gin and tonic. If you do something like that, and then a comment, that'll be picked up, hopefully, for us as well. So, Ansar,
No, I don't see
good
that.
evening, welcome. How are you, sir?
Hey, hello everybody. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yep, you're
Yep.
coming through, mate.
Okay. All right, jolly good. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I would like to say that I looked at this video because you told me about it the other day, and I'm pretty upset with my performance, to be fair, looking back. But it was 4 years ago, and you know, I'd had a rough night, shall we say? So yeah, fair enough. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about what I should have said or could have done at particular times. So yeah.
Yeah, it's always good as a, it's easy, as you know, as an armchair to go through it. And in the moment, you don't always think of everything that you could say. But I think there were some good things that you did say here as well. And then we'll stop it and ask you whether you still have a particular view or whether you've changed something. And, as somebody who learns all the time, and I think we'd all agree that if you get better information and we get new information that is backed up by good science, then we change our views. So it might be that some of the things you've said here you may not agree with, maybe you still do, and you've got good reasons to defend it that maybe you didn't articulate here. So we'll go through it. Just shout stop. Any one of you guys who are listening now, the 4 of you guys, just shout stop when you hear something that you want to comment on. And just shout it quite loudly because I'll be listening to the video as well. So feel free to speak up when you want me to stop.
What I said then, what I say is that belief and knowing are interchangeable. Now, you look at it on the scale.
Okay, that was quite quick. I'm not sure if you still hold that. I wouldn't say belief and knowledge are interchangeable. I think knowledge is a subset of belief. It's a much stronger claim than belief. Belief, for me, is accepting a proposition as true or likely true, and sometimes without evidence, whereas knowledge is justified true belief, or in my case, reliably produced true belief. And those extra criteria make it a much stronger claim and therefore a subset of belief. So the view generally is that you can't know some external proposition unless you already believe it and in virtue of it being true. So there's much stronger criteria. And so that, in my view, it wouldn't be interchangeable. I don't know if you agree, Ansar, or whether anybody else has got something to say about it, but I wouldn't say that those are synonymous or interchangeable.
I would agree with you, Rob. Belief and knowing is 2 different things.
Okay, yeah. I think the reason why I said that is because I wanted to avoid the absolutism trap of claiming that knowing something is absolute, meaning that it's not once you can know things to an absolute. That's what I was avoiding. So I was using it as a kind of scale that belief is, like you said, belief is the thing that we're talking about, and a subset of that is claiming to know things. But then I explain in a few seconds why you would qualify that, i.e. being able to demonstrate, being able to verify, having independent people, being able to check, etc.
Yeah, and I think on that point, though, having knowledge, if you're a fallibilist, and I think most of us are, I'd be interested to hear somebody argue for the infallibilist position. But a fallibilist position is that you can know something, but you could still be wrong about it. In other words, you don't have epistemic certainty about claiming to know something, but you can know it to a high probability, so you could be justified. And justification doesn't require epistemic certainty. So I think if you frame it like that and you can explain that to somebody, then when somebody says, I know, you can take it to mean that they believe they have a justified reason, they believe it in virtue of it being true, and that justification is not epistemically certain. So if you put it in that variety, I think there's no problem saying I know. But then, as you say, Ansar, you'd have to qualify that and get somebody like Hamza, which would be difficult, to understand that, number one, and agree to it, number two. Because if he didn't agree to it, it'd be self-defeating for him. Then he would never be able to claim knowledge about anything. Now, there are epistemic nihilists, people who think that knowledge is impossible because to know something would mean that you would have to have you'd have to be certain about it. But I think that's a self-defeating position, and I'm not aware of many people that take that view. Okay.
That if you have no evidence for something, especially if it's really amazing, you'd say I believe very little in that. Yeah?
Yeah, of course.
On the other end of the scale, you'd say I can prove this, I can demonstrate it, anybody can check
Yeah, well, okay.
it. I believe very strongly.
Okay, well, let's go to the nitty-gritty then. You can't prove this universe came into existence by itself and caused itself. You can't prove that. I can't prove to you empirically with observable, testable evidence that God exists. So we can, both of us can forget that.
Yeah.
All right. So what we have
Can
to
you work on likelihood or...
Well, we can work on probabilities. We can work on reason.
Yep.
Okay. So, for me, the word belief, and it's not for me, I don't make up the understanding of the term belief. It's in the dictionary, it's in the thesaurus. It means convinced by, accept, trust, have faith. Yep. This is what it is. All right.
Yeah, just quickly, I disagree with have the word faith. I think you could accept somebody trusted, whatever the case is, but that would be, a much weaker claim to say I believe something. So, but faith, I think we'd have to separate. That's a separate term from belief, because nobody says I have faith. Most people say they believe, and it's only when they run out of reasons to believe, then they retreat to the word faith. So I don't think those are interchangeable from my view, anyway.
So for me, let me ask you now, as an atheist, do you not believe God exists, or do you deny God exists?
I not believe.
You don't deny?
No.
Okay, so I just want to hear from you guys as a panel. Has Ansar dropped off there? Oh, he might have dropped off there for some reason. No, Ansar's not on here anymore, so he's dropped off the panel there. So hopefully he'll join us back again. I just want to hear from all of you guys. Do you think that that you deny God or you do not believe? Do you see a distinction there? And if you do, what is it? Because he asked the question as if this is a dichotomy. Do you deny God exists, or do you simply not believe that God exists? So
well, you can't deny what doesn't exist. You first need to demonstrate that something exists before you can deny it. So you can't deny the existence of all gods as a general term. You just don't believe it. Finished.
Yeah, or to the theists on the panel, if somebody said, do you believe, do you deny the existence of Thanos, or do you simply not believe it? Do you think that there's are those two different propositions, or are they same proposition reworded?
Okay, this is what I think. Denying is saying you know the fact to be true, but you reject the fact. So I think that's. He's playing with something here, so it's better to say, do you believe in God exists? Because he doesn't know anything about him, right? So I don't know why he's asking, do you deny God or do you believe God doesn't exist? So I'm confused as much as you.
Okay, so for me here, I would be asking, what do you mean by denial? To me, there's a proposition God exists, or Allah exists in this particular case. A denial of it can be synonymous with I do not believe a God exists. Because that, at the end of the day, you are saying, I don't believe a God exists, but that to me can be synonymous with a denial of God's existence from an epistemic point of view. But then you need to understand from him, what does it mean by denial? I think the main thing to take away here is whenever somebody says something and you're not sure, ask them the question, what do you mean by X? Because then they can give you a definition. You can either agree with it or get them to agree with your one before you move on. Because if he means by denial that you mean... Is it the case that you think it's impossible for a God to exist, or you don't believe a God exists? Those are two different claims. So it depends what he means by the word, to me at least, what he means by the word denial. If it's simply the rejection of the proposition God exists, well then yes, I'm quite happy to accept that. Somebody else might not, right?
Rob, sorry, I'll let Thunderous go.
Sorry, I think it was me that started speaking. Can you guys hear me now again?
Yeah, coming
Yeah,
through.
sorry about that. My connection might be a bit choppy. If it happens, I'll jump out and jump in again. Guys, just carry on if it happens. Yeah, sorry about that. I agree with. Sorry, about this point, I agree with Stops, because I think what it comes down to is that using the word deny implies denial, which is the psychological condition of not being willing to accept, which is blatantly true, happening in your life or whatever. So, deny God, that's just a silly thing to ask. I, as an atheist or whatever position I have, I deny the claim of a particular God. And, I can't, like Stop said, I can't deny God in principle. Like, I really am not that, I don't know everything about the universe to be able to make such claims.
Rob, what I was going to say, the only time I've ever heard the word denial being used is, in a psychological setting, or if somebody's being questioned, like a prosecution or like a legal something in a legal procession where somebody's like, do you deny these facts? Like it's real, but do you deny it? So I don't like that word deny in any sense, not in just how Hamza is using it. I think deny is a word you use to attack your opponent with. A more fair word would be, do you reject instead of deny, if it's a fair word.
Yeah, I think those two could be synonymous, but I think this was 3 years ago, and I don't think Hamza's learnt a little bit, or so he thinks anyway, on the belief claim, but I think he was extremely ignorant at this point, because I think the main two things to talk about is belief and knowledge. Anything other than belief and knowledge, I don't really know what you're talking about, and I don't think most people know what they're talking about when they do, and it ultimately ends up being one of those two anyway. And if you look at philosophy, those are the two epistemic claims that are often talked about. I'm not aware of these other things about denial that will fall under belief or knowledge either way. And so if somebody knows what they mean by belief and knowledge, then you can say, what do you mean? Are you talking about a knowledge claim or a belief claim? And then they would hopefully clarify that, and you can move on.
No, I can't deny it.
So you don't go around telling people that they're wrong for believing in God?
I do actually, but that's because I...
So you deny it, right?
No,
So you deny it then?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I say to you is this, look, I don't...
Okay, well, do you want to clarify? Let's you finish here, and then you can say if you want to update it a bit more or not, Ansar.
Go around telling people that there's definitely no God.
No. Do you go around saying to people they're wrong for believing in God, or crazy for believing in God?
It depends on the individual. Now, if I normally ask people, what do you believe and why do you believe it?
Alhamdulillah, that's my motto. You stole my flipping line.
I got it from Matt Delahanty actually, but I have heard you say
Okay,
it.
well, what do you believe and why do you believe it?
Wait a second, I was just going to finish something.
Okay, good point here, Ansar. This is what I do like about Ansar, right? He doesn't get fazed by somebody trying to go off track. What do you believe and why do you believe it? This was a complete change of direction now, and a shifting of the goalposts, because they're talking about this belief thing. And what does Ansar say to people? I'm quite happy to say to people that I think you are mistaken for believing in God, right? I'm quite happy to say that. And then they could ask me why, and I could say, in your particular case, Mr. Christian or Mr. Muslim or Mr. Hindu or whatever the case may be. So I'm quite happy to say that. And it sounds, Ansar, like you are prepared to say that. And I think what you seem to be qualifying is it depends on either the God or the person. So thinking back to it, what if you want to reword it now, what was going through your mind when you answered this, or how would you answer it now?
I think I'd pretty much say the same thing. I may flesh it out differently slightly, but the main thing would be is that, if someone tells me they believed in something, then that's fine. But if it immediately is something that they're claiming to be 100% true, then I would start to wonder, okay, if something is genuinely actually true about the world, you need to give me more than just I believe it. Do you know what I mean? So my process.
Okay, but understood. But so with let's, because we're talking about Muslim and certainly Hamza. So if Hamza comes along and says, "Hey, Ansar, I believe in Allah," and his response is, and then he says to you, "Am I wrong for believing that?" What are you going to say to him?
I'm going to say, well, why do you believe in Allah? What's your reason? And if
So he gives you X, Y, and Z reasons, and then he says, "Am I wrong for believing that?"
So I would process those reasons according to my idea of logic, evidence, and value, intellectual value. So running it through my brain, I'd say, nah, I think that's a weak reason. I think that's a weak reason. And if someone did ever come up with a good reason for believing in anything, like that, I would change my mind and say, you know what, I think you've got a decent reason there. Maybe I should adjust my own personal position.
Okay.
And what are we talking about again? Yeah, I don't go around saying there's definitely no.
So you don't deny God exists? That's fantastic.
But you hear what he says there, right? We've got to, and it's not easy in the moment, as you say, especially if you have a hangover, right? You say, I don't go around saying God definitely doesn't exist. He takes that to mean, well, then you're not denying God. But actually, depending on how you use the word deny, because I don't think deny is an absolute claim anyway. Maybe you do, and that's why maybe you were responding that way. To me, when I hear deny, that's not, because then they'd have to qualify it with, do you deny with certainty or something like that? Or I will ask them, what do you, because that's why I say, going back to the very beginning, if you ask them what you mean by deny before the conversation gets going further, then when he uses the word, you know what it means and he knows what it means and you've agreed on that. If you haven't done that, you're thinking maybe he means this, he's maybe thinking that, and there's been no clarification about what deny means.
They tell me they believe in God, and I say why, and they don't come up with good reasons, and I say, well, you haven't got good reasons.
Fantastic. So what you're saying is this: the people who say they believe in God, convinced by God, accept God, trust God exists, have faith God exists, and the reasons they have for believing so, you reject their reasons, yeah?
Well, I haven't heard any good reasons.
All right. So what is your reason for rejecting that? What is your reason? What will you accept? What's your criteria of evidence?
What I said was, I haven't heard any good.
No. You can't ask me to make up the criteria. I can't make up the criteria. You're the one who has the.
I don't know.
No, right.
I don't know what would convince me. I'll be honest.
Okay, so this is a good point. What's your view? Are you still of that view, Ansar? Or have you updated it or tweaked it, or where are you with regards to that?
No, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, I do go on to say straight away that some physical evidence would be a good start. But yeah, ultimately, I can't give you a list of things because I don't consider that it's a valid hypothesis to claim things exist that are by definition untestable. So it doesn't work in the world of my understanding of logic and science and reality. So I can't really think of any methodology or any actual way that someone could demonstrate something that they claim, which I think, basically I would expect it to be along the lines of the scientific method. If they can provide valid procedures to go about demonstrating it, I'm interested. If not, if it's just philosophy, then I'm not that interested.
So I was interested in something you said there. You said that it's untestable. Are you of the view that we cannot test supernatural claims in any way in the natural world, in which case you'd be a philosophical naturalist possibly? Or are you of the view that in principle it is possible to ascertain whether a supernatural event has occurred in this world?
Yeah, but I don't know, like if you can detect something, then then whatever it is that you're detecting falls within the realm of naturalism, because we only have access to natural processes and natural methods of inquiry. So if you detect something through our instruments, then they are obviously working according to our naturalistic understanding that our instruments are built upon. We don't have a supernatural methodology that's valid, or if there is such a thing, or can be such a thing. So no, I would say that I'm pretty much philosophical naturalist, if that's what that means then.
Okay, so you're of the view that if in principle we could go back in time and because I use it because it's a well accepted, well it's well known. If we went back in time and we were able to be in the burial chamber of Jesus Christ and he was dead for 3 days, his body was in decay, and we could scientifically show that everything was decayed, the heart had stopped, everything, the brain, the physical body was in decay as we understand dead to be after 3 days. And he then either almost instantaneously or in a very short period of time, everything started to regenerate and he came back to life, for want of a better reason. You would still deny that could, in principle, be a supernatural thing, and you would look for aliens or something else. In other words, that event could never be a supernatural event in your view.
No, I mean, if that happened in front of me, which if that happened in front of me and I could check it with my own eyes and I knew enough about the universe, like if I've got time travel, I could probably check a lot of other things to see whether it was aliens or to see whether it was some sort of spontaneous regeneration of the life spirit or whatever. If I was pretty conclusively sure that no, there's no natural explanation for this occurrence, it must be supernatural, I would then say it could just be some aspect of the natural world that we haven't managed to understand yet, which could be it, which will always be the case for any type of claim like this. But again, if I was that sure, I would, and I thought I'd exhausted all other possibilities, then I would change my view and say no, then we don't live in a naturalistic universe. We live in one where it's not so simple, and in fact there are other things going on. But again, I wouldn't be 100% sure that validates the supernatural realm. I would just say then that there's this grey area for the time being.
Okay, but I think if we can agree right now, because you are going to talk about this in this video again, maybe you don't agree, and that's fine. If you don't, that's cool. But if we can agree that we don't need epistemic certainty to claim to make a knowledge claim, then we never need to use that word. So I could say I know something, but I don't need to qualify it with I need to be certain, unless you're an epistemic nihilist, in which case you require certainty for a knowledge claim. If you're not, if you're a fallibilist that says, hey, I can have knowledge without it being epistemically certain, cool. If you don't have that view, that's fine. I just want to check, because you do qualify it with I can't be certain, and I'm not asking for certainty from you, and I don't think that's possible.
I would say I'm a fallibilist. I would say
Yeah.
that I take the view of a fallibilist. Yeah.
But you also said that, hey, it could be the case that there might be something else, and I think that's where you've got to put your tent pole somewhere in the ground. Either you're of the view that there could always be a naturalistic explanation that we've never come across, or you're going to take the position that, hey, the majority of the evidence points towards a supernatural claim here, based on, let's say in this case, the Bible and everything we understand, that this appears to violate the laws of physics. And we could always presuppose that there's aliens that are taking, invisible aliens doing it. Or we could go with a view that, hey, all the preponderance of evidence points towards something that is non-naturalistic. So I guess you'd have to put your 10 poles somewhere and go, yes, I am prepared to, or I'm going to take the view that, no, there might be something out there, so I'm going to have to either withhold it or I'm going to deny that supernatural is possible.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm not really 100% sure. The way I say it, more generally speaking, is that at the moment I would put my tent in the ground as a naturalist. Yeah, and for I would say for very good reason. I can't predict what other things that we as a species or me personally are going to find out or experience about the world. I can only say that I would be very, very skeptical to go from a naturalist to entertaining a supernatural dimensional reality. I'd be very, very skeptical. And if it did, in fact, turn out that there was enough good reason and evidence to make that change, then I'm about trying to be intellectually honest and really see what the universe actually is. So I'm prepared to change my mind if I found myself in that situation.
Okay, I hear you. I think the theist could push back, the Muslim, or in this case maybe Hamza or anybody else could push back and say, but hang on a moment, you're saying that you might accept evidence, but it sounds like, A, you don't know what the evidence is, B, you're going to be, quote, very, very skeptical. So actually, is it the case that any evidence could ever be presented to you, Ansar, that would in fact give you the view that this is supernatural? And I think to my ear, it sounds like it's not. And if it's not, then just put it like that. But it almost sounds to my ear, and this is just you and I speaking, that you're trying to hedge your bets there. So I could see a theist being not convinced that your answer was one way or the other.
Yeah, but I mean, being honest with myself about how I understand the world, that is what I would have to say, because I'm not necessarily trying to win them over or get them to see the error of their thinking ways or whatever. If we're having that conversation like we are, me and you having right now, I would end up having to admit that I start off with a position of knowing that I'm fallible, and if there are some absolutes that we can glean from the universe, we can't really demonstrate them to an absolute extent. So as much as we can stake our claims on starting from that position and it constantly being validated for however many levels, I just can't bear this concept of absolutism. So I'd have to constantly.
But I agree with you on that. But then don't use that word absolute. But because Hamza's not asking for it, I'm not asking for it. I don't know if Smart Cat or anybody in the panel is asking for that. And like I say, as far as I can tell, only somebody like an epistemic nihilist would insist on epistemic certainty. So if nobody's asking you for that, then I guess it's not helpful for you to bring it up and say, well, I'm not 100% certain, because he and everybody else will go, well, we're not asking for that.
Yeah, but then it makes it even more simple. Then ultimately, I would do my best to make my intellectual position in line with the preponderance of evidence and available knowledge and logic and etc. So whatever that entails, I'd have to go with it, being intellectually honest.
It's worth asking, and I think Stops and I have had the conversation. We'll go on with the video now because we could talk all evening about it. But I think it is worth asking yourself, and I've done that, and I've listened to other people about what evidence might, and if you ask me now, I could go through that. I don't want to do it again now. I've done it many times, but I thought about what evidence would convince me, or at least move me significantly towards, either Allah or Jesus or Christian or whatever it might be. And I have in my mind some idea of what that might be. Because you can take the view, well, I don't know what it is, but if it came about, I would be convinced. That obviously puts the theist in the position of, well, I don't know what to say to you then, Ansar, because if you don't know what would convince you, I'm just going to be, farting in the wind, trying to give you reasons where you haven't set down a criteria that I might be able to match. Because we often ask the theist, what's your criteria for X, right? And then we can present or we can challenge them on that. But if we don't have a criteria, then it's very difficult for them to present anything.
Yeah, but Robert, it doesn't matter if they know what my criteria is, because even if I told them my criteria, they're not God. They can't conjure it up just to prove a point. Nothing would change, even if I had a very definite and specific criteria. God, actually, their claim for God does know what my criteria is.
Sorry, that would be God's job.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
If you have a criteria-
So him asking me is irrelevant. Their God already knows what my criteria, and he's chosen not to present his
Yeah, but
evidence.
Ansar, can I make a suggestion? Because I've been in the situation, and I realize that if you say, well, it's not up to me, God is omnipotent, omniscient, and all merciful, that everything should happen. You are going to be painted as though you don't know what you're doing, you don't even know what to expect, you don't know what's going on. Therefore, my suggestion is do two things, and that is, number one, say, well, I wouldn't know to be 100% sure. I would expect God to know this, to be able to ascertain what it is that I specifically need. And then I would offer something specific. In my case, this is if the Quran were updated on an hourly basis in every single language available on the planet. Then I give them a very specific criteria on top of the general one. So that you have two different options.
That's a good
there.
one, yeah.
But
That's a good one. Yeah, I agree.
Is that a sincere requirement from your part? Is that what your heart yearns?
Yes.
Your heart sincerely yearns for a constantly upgrading Quran.
Correct.
And if you
Yeah,
got that from God, you would become a Muslim.
No, that would push me one step further into accepting that there might be a deity or some supernatural being.
Well, I think
Okay,
Smart
all
Cat,
right,
the
I
way
just
you
wanted
phrase that question is bizarre, right? Like his heart. Presumably you mean his critical thinking.
I'm
No,
taking it as
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was asking if that was a true, sincere. That's what his heart was yearning for. I don't think
I'm sure he doesn't go. I'm sure he doesn't go to bed though. Going, do you know what? I wish the Quran was updated every hour. But it's a criteria that he's putting forward that would move him along the line towards
So
Islam,
it's
for
a
example.
logical criteria. It's something based on ration, and it has nothing to do with emotion, and it has nothing to do with the heart.
Why would you bring emotion into a rational discussion? I mean, that's like oil and water.
No, I'm not. I'm just. I wanted to know. I just wanted to know what his criteria was to come closer to becoming a theist. Where it was coming from.
Okay, let's go on now. Otherwise, we'll never finish. But we might not finish anyway. But I think it's a good discussion for all of us here. And hopefully, I know Thunderous is sitting quietly for a mic drop moment that he's going to just jump in with. But yeah, let's carry on here.
Not likely.
Well, then you can't say someone hasn't convinced you. Because you have to have a standard of criteria that has to be logical.
No, we're not. This is not a mathematical equation.
It is.
It's not. It's not. What I'm saying to you...
If we're talking logic, it is.
I'm not saying that 100% my position is perfect, yeah? What I'm saying is that I don't believe there's a God because I can't think of any good reason to believe there's a God. Now, when someone tells me they do...
Only thing you got to be, to me here, the only thing that sticks out for me at this moment is that they can just say, well, that's an argument from personal incredulity. Just the fact that you haven't heard one doesn't mean God doesn't exist or there isn't good reasons. Now, you could respond, and I think you did here with, well, I haven't heard that, so I'm not convinced. And I think that's fair enough. But somebody could try and saddle you with, well, that's just an argument from ignorance or personal incredulity because you haven't looked at every single argument in favor of God. So therefore, to say that is based on ignorance. And to some degree, that's true. I think all of us have never heard every single argument for or against God. So that's the only thing that sort of popped in my mind when you said that. But I think your response there is kind of adequate anyway.
I say, okay, well, tell me your reasons. Now, if they tell me any good reasons, I'd adjust myself.
So for you, what's a good reason?
But I don't know. I don't know what would be. Some physical evidence would be a good start.
Right. So
would be a good start.
Right,
even that would not be.
No, it wouldn't. Because we can't trust our senses.
Yeah. So
what's your criteria for evidence? Because
okay, hang on a moment. If you can't trust your senses, then you've shot yourself in the foot. And you can't believe the Quran. You can't believe anything. So you've got to presuppose that your senses are reliable until it's demonstrated that they're unreliable. You can't prove it because that would be circular, but you've got to trust your senses at least to a high degree of probability. Because if you can't trust your senses, you're done. Then no rational argument will ever work. And so Hamza's sort of shooting himself in the foot, I think, by claiming that you can't trust your senses.
You can't ask
Yeah,
for
and
criteria.
I shouldn't have agreed with it. I shouldn't have
I'm not
agreed
sure
with
that you.
him, yeah, but
I'm not sure that you did it. Well, did you agree? I'm not sure if you did.
I said yeah because I didn't want to get into the whole solipsism thing with him.
Yeah, but I don't think that you meant, like I actually agree with what you said. It's like, let's move on or something like that, possibly. It's more a case of, as you say, trying to move the conversation on. But I definitely pick up on that and say to him, well, if you can't trust your senses, then how can you believe or how can you demonstrate anything you're saying is rational? And in fact, that your process that you undertook to become a Muslim was rational if you can't trust your senses.
because if you don't have a criteria for evidence, how can I match it? It's an unfair question. You can't ask me to prove something you haven't got no evidence to
Yeah,
prove.
but I mean-
That's his hobby horse. That's the reason why it's like Stop said. If you've got a criteria, at least you're putting something on the table. Otherwise, he's going to have that response, and other theists could too. And then they can walk away from you. Say, well, that atheist, he doesn't even know what would convince him, so it's pointless me speaking to him. And so that's the only reason I'm thinking that something, like you put something else on the table that at least is rational. They might not ever be able to meet the standard, but at least you put something rational on the table.
I mean, we said already before that we're never going to be able to prove anything.
No, we have to have a standard at least.
What's the point? If you can't prove anything 100%, what's the standard? We already decided.
No, we have that. Well,
we already decided that it's a
So why have you
state.
checked the stance God doesn't exist?
I didn't say that. I said, I emphatically explained that I've never said.
So you believe a creator does exist?
Will you let me finish?
Well,
Hamza, I said that I don't believe that a God definitely exists, but I
Right.
can't be sure that one doesn't.
alhamdulillah, I have no issue with that.
Yeah. So
Okay. What's your view on that now? Are you still in that view, or how would you express yourself with that now, Ansar?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a hard atheist like that, where I would say that I'm 100% certain that no such thing as any type of God exists at all. It's not possible. I would still say something along the lines of, I haven't heard any argument for any God that I've heard of, so I don't think they exist. Any type of God that I personally can imagine, I still can't see any good reason to think of, so I dismiss their existence. So yeah, I'd pretty much say roughly the same thing.
Okay, I mean, this is you and I, right? Just to my ear, it sounds a little bit Weasley the way you've put it there, because there's two positions these days that most atheists take. There are a few that say they know, which is, again, unless they're going to qualify it with epistemic certainty, that is a strong claim. They know God doesn't exist, which all it requires is a justified belief in virtue of it being true. Somebody like Aaron Ra, right? He's not just a strong atheist. He's like virtually an epistemic certain atheist, or as close to that as humanly possible, right? But if you're not that and I'm not that, then the position is: do you lack a belief in a God, or do you believe a God does not exist? Because those are not quite the same things.
Yeah, like I say, any concept of God that I can imagine or have heard of, I don't believe exists. And I believe,
Okay, so you
and
take
I
the
also
stronger
believe
view.
doesn't exist. Yeah, I believe doesn't
so you
exist.
take the stronger view.
I can't say any further than that. I can't say in principle or anything other. I just say on that basis of what I can imagine or have heard of, I believe does not exist.
Yeah, so it would follow from that then anybody does believe that, in your view, is mistaken, as far as you can tell. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Okay,
because then they'd have to convince me like why they do believe it. Yeah. Maybe that's different, but I might be missing out the subtle nuances in the position because I'm not that up to date with it. But
I thought I
still had the same view.
I think if you said at this moment in time, I do not believe a God or gods exist, that short sentence, if that's in fact what you believe, that would be sufficient, right? He could ask you then, okay, why don't you believe? So you've got to have reasons ready for that. And I think, I'm not saying you do, but a number of atheists that I've spoken to are very unwilling to give reasons because they now feel like they have to shoulder a burden of proof. And I do think that we do have a burden of proof to shoulder, which is to justify or to give warrant for why we do not believe a God exists. With a lack of belief, you're not really telling somebody anything.
Yeah, so holding a position means that you should have some thinking behind it that you can demonstrate.
Yeah. But if you whatever you said here, if you replaced it with, hey, I do not believe a God exists, and I think anybody that does believe that is mistaken to the best of my ability, would that be a fair summary of your position?
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so and it's much shorter and it's more concise and it's more impactful, and at least then he can respond in whatever way, because the way you said it here was kind of like a little bit all over the show, at least to my ear.
Yeah.
So right. Saying to me, why don't you believe God doesn't exist?
No. What I'm saying is, all right, so you don't believe God exists. You don't accept it.
I'm not convinced that there is any kind of...
No, I am convinced. Yeah? Because I personally don't believe this universe...
See, the thing is, you keep asking me to prove why I don't believe something, yeah? You're the one that believes it. The onus is on you.
No, but if you... Look...
All I'm saying is, I've never heard a good reason for why anybody...
Yeah, but you haven't given anyone a criteria to match.
I haven't got the criteria.
Okay,
we already established that.
All right. So why do you think... You know this universe... Do you believe this universe has always existed, for example?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Okay, this position you needed to hold on to because you are going to take a different position later, right? Because he goes on and on about this, and I think you're absolutely correct to say that. When you say you don't know, in other words, you're undecided about whether the universe had some sort of a beginning or whether it's past eternal. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you. There's no consensus by the scientific community and the cosmologists. There's some well-known cosmologists that think the universe is past eternal. There's some that think the universe had some sort of beginning. Interestingly, the people that think it had a beginning obviously posit a naturalistic explanation, and they have some, although not overwhelming evidence, but some evidence for what that naturalistic explanation is. There's no scientist that isn't a theist that postulates some sort of supernatural beginning to the universe if there was something.
But answer the point that Rob is making is if you use, because they ask you a lot of questions, and every time you say, I don't know, this gives the impression, you're the atheist, the I don't know atheist. So in other words, they're going to use it as an emotional point. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. So it is better to use different words than I don't know. Because I also made this mistake in the beginning, and I agree that it's much better to use something else so that they can't make this I don't know atheist.
Yeah.
So I think, have a think of this, and so have something, whatever you prefer. I like now the word I'm undecided. Because to me, there's three options, right? Either a universe, in terms of ontology, i.e. the way the world is, it's either a universe had a beginning or it didn't, right? That's the only two options. That's a true dichotomy. Let's say he says to you as he does, okay, the universe had a beginning. On that proposition, you can accept the proposition, you can reject it, or you can be undecided. So you have three epistemic positions with regards to that claim of the universe had a beginning. And to me, if I say I'm undecided, that takes away the ambiguity, because if you say I don't know, I'm thinking, do you mean like a philosophical don't know, or is it just a layman's, well, I'm not too sure one way or the other. And if you say I'm undecided, to my ear, and again, give me your own words or your own thoughts on this, that makes it very clear. I'm not taking the position that I dismiss it. I'm not taking the position that I accept it. I'm undecided on the proposition the universe began to exist.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, guys. There's a much better phrase that keeps me guarded from the the typical kind of tactics they employ. I don't know. It obviously implies ignorance. I mean, obviously between us three and us 4 or 5 on the panel, we know that that's not the case. I don't know is a state of honesty. If you genuinely are not one way or the other, you would say I don't know if this is true or that is true. If it's a dichotomy, but
it's just intercepting the tactics.
Yeah, exactly. So based on the fact that it's obviously, if you read the comments, that's literally the main thing that people in the comments go on about. This is the I don't know guy. This guy's answer to anything he can't answer is I don't know, and somehow that's a get out clause. Yeah, but obviously we understand what I mean by it.
Yeah, I know what you mean by it, but not everybody does, and it depends who you're speaking to. A layperson like Hamza, for example, I don't know is actually synonymous, and I would agree with, like, I'm undecided, I'm agnostic, I'm a fence sitter. And I think to make the point stronger so that you don't have the Muslim saying, well, it's a don't know guy, and Qaida Phil said that as well, and we know what he means. But if you say I'm undecided, and the reason I'm undecided is because the overwhelming majority of cosmologists are undecided. In other words, there's some that believe X, some that believe Y based on their hypothetical models, and there is no consensus, and therefore I'm undecided. If I say it that way, that's very clear why. I'm not just picking a position like by throwing a dice or because I've got some information that's not available to everybody else. I'm taking the position of there is no consensus on this view, and I think that's the most reasonable position as a layperson that I can take. Otherwise, I'm going to favor one hypothesis over another, and neither of them is more convincing necessarily than the other one. So phrased like that, I think that position is entirely rational, and it's substantial enough for somebody to understand. They can disagree and take one position or the other, but the moment they do that, now they've got a huge burden, right? Because if the scientific consensus hasn't got a consensus, and somebody says, well, the universe had a beginning or the universe is past eternal, they're now shouldering an exceptional burden, in my view. Now they have to demonstrate to me why that's the case. What do they know that the vast majority of cosmologists don't know?
Yeah, I get you guys. It definitely makes sense. I mean, saying I don't know, you could say I don't know about anything that you've never
Carry
heard
on,
or you know nothing about.
Okay.
Qualifying it the way you did is saying it properly, basically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Stops is getting...
All right. Well, I can only go for what science says, isn't it? The tested method, yeah? You're an atheist, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, so you trust science, isn't it? And the scientific method.
Yeah, I trust the scientific
So
method.
do you trust Stephen Hawking?
Not about everything.
Do you trust him when he says that the universe began to exist?
Okay, he didn't. That's a good point. Yep, not about everything. That's good. He doesn't say the universe began to exist. At the time in 1997, he was of the view that there was a singularity, which was likely, if not the starting point, the very close to the starting point. He's since changed his mind on that. Obviously, he's passed away, and he and Sir Roger Penrose have vastly changed their mind on that. Penrose, in fact, thinks that the universe is past eternal in iterations called eons. So this
Next,
1997 view is old.
The universe is finite.
I don't think you can really know that for sure.
Right,
I think it.
We just agreed not to know for
think-
sure.
I think.
What do we say? Possibility, probability.
I think that the scientists say the universe is expanding and therefore must have come from a singular point. They say that because of the evidence, and it looks like that.
Well, that's a scientific method.
Yeah, but that's not proof, is it?
No, but it's a scientific method.
But it's not proof, is it?
So you don't believe the universe began to exist?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't think it's been proven 100% either way.
Well,
it looks like it had a beginning, but it's not proof.
what would be?
That's the thing there. I mean, you've got to be careful to commit to that. It looks like it had a beginning. I mean, who says that? Is that like your personal opinion? Is that based on some evidence? What is that? I think sticking with a view that I'm undecided is the safest way and the most intellectually honest way to go. Because otherwise you're just, giving a personal opinion, and then he's going to press you on that view.
Yeah, no, I know now, having thought about it, I know exactly why I said that at that time and why I made that mistake, is because at that time, I actually probably thought, thinking about it, at that time, I thought that the Big Bang Theory was dominant. It wasn't conclusive, as I explained, but I thought it was not the consensus either, but I thought it was the dominant theory. So I didn't know that. I think it was after I met you, Rob, and you told me about these sorts of things, and I started to learn more about cosmology and realized that actually no, there's a real hard split between the experts, rather than the Big Bang being the main theory, and then there being a few people who disagree with it. I didn't realize that it was actually a hard split.
Yeah, and also just so everybody knows, the Big Bang isn't necessarily the beginning of the universe. It's just an early iteration of what happened. It's not necessarily the beginning.
Can I ask a
Would be proof
question?
for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Ansar, I want to know the background to this meeting. Who approached who between you and Hamza?
Why is that important?
I'm just curious. I just want to know who approached who.
I mean, I can tell you in about 30 seconds. It's not a big deal. That day was similar type of weather as now this time of year. No, hardly anybody was there. There was literally 20 people there. So I was talking to Mohammed Tawheed. He didn't have a clue what was going on. He was upset with some of the things I'd said to him. He went over to Hamza and told him about me. Hamza came over, his camera crew, and just started this.
Okay, so you did not go to Hamza seeking information. He came to you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right, cool.
It might be something that we might never know the answer.
According to the scientific method, what's proof?
Evidence. But getting evidence for something that happened.
Well, no, testable evidence, isn't it?
Yeah, but getting evidence for the origin of the universe might well be outside the
No, we're not talking about the origin of the universe. We're talking about, is the universe, first of all, finite and infinite?
Yeah, well, that might be out of the scope of science.
Well, according to science right now, what we know of, and all we can go off, is it's finite.
According to the
that's
evidence
not
they've gained, that's what it looks
Right.
like.
Now, do you agree with that evidence or not?
I would say that it looks like that, yeah.
Would you agree with that or not?
I would say that it looks like the universe had a beginning.
Right.
Definitely.
And you accept that everything that has a beginning requires a cause?
No, but like I said to you, I said it looks like the universe had a beginning. I don't agree that it's 100% fact that it had.
Well, what did we say? Possibility, probability?
Yeah, it's pretty.
Right. Is it more probable or more possible?
I don't actually know because I'm not qualified to really check the evidence.
So you think, all right,
But
Stephen,
what I would want is the consensus of cosmologists,
Right.
and they will do say that. So I would agree with that.
all right, so let's go with that then.
That's the most
Okay,
likely.
so as you say, you've updated your view now. You would take a view that you're undecided on that position. At that stage, that's what you thought, which isn't necessarily the consensus. Because now he's going to press you on this point.
Thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything that begins to exist has a cause. Would you accept that?
I don't know. Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Yes.
I suppose in the universe, yeah.
Can you name anything that began to exist without a
Within
cause?
the universe, that's fair enough.
Right, alhamdulillah. So if the universe began to exist, according to
Hang on a minute, I said within the universe. Now you're talking about the universe. I don't know whether that.
Well, we just agreed
I said
we just
within the universe,
Your words,
things
your
begin-
words. Consensus of the cosmologists said the universe began to exist. Your
Yeah, I
words,
know.
right? So it began to exist.
No, but I'm not saying that. I wouldn't go around saying that as 100%.
No, you didn't say that. We just said,
I don't
no, we didn't say you did. We said the consensus of the cosmologists.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Yeah, science is quite tentative. Yeah, meaning that things
the word
can happen in the future.
Alhamdulillah, we can only go off what we know now,
I'm
innit?
not going to put my 100%.
No one's asking you to.
But you are.
No, I'm not.
You keep telling me to confirm that the universe definitely began to.
Well, according to the consensus,
I'm not agreeing.
well,
with
according to
that.
the consensus of scientists, it did.
And I'm saying that is a consensus.
Okay,
of science.
okay. Could the, all right,
That's
all right,
not
let's do the other way
something-
around. Could the universe have always existed?
It might have done.
Well, according to
Okay,
cosmologists, no, it couldn't.
Rob,
This is
just
what I'm
take a
saying, I
break
don't agree
here.
with them.
This is amazing. Okay, to see the shuffling around, to see I mean, this is like a left-hand waltz or something. He is constantly changing. He's constantly, desperately trying to get you to say, yes, it had a beginning, so that he could bring his cosmological argument in there. And you are simply not playing. And it's fascinating to see how desperate Hamza is to try and get this in here, trying every single trick in the book, and it simply does not work. So you need to be very and extremely careful with what you say if you are coming up against somebody like this. Subo is also like this, where you need to be careful of every word that they are saying, because they're all saying, so you are saying this, saying something completely different than what you've ever said.
You know what? At this speed, it actually does illustrate that point. Stops, because you can see how many questions he's firing at me purely for the purpose of, like you said, getting me to agree the universe definitely had a beginning. And then we all know that gives him the right to reel off his script for
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's partly because you sort of said, well, it looks like this, right? Now you wouldn't say that. You'd be of the agnostic view or the undecided position, and then this line of critique wouldn't work with you, and that's actually and that's the most honest position. So I think it's because that, and you are. If I was in his position, right, and not quite in his position, but if I was doing this, to my ear, it's like it sounds like a little bit like you're trying to dance here, in the sense that you think that that's what the overwhelming cosmologists think, and he's going, okay, cool, that's what they think. Okay, then let me run the cosmological argument on you. But then when he does that, you go, well, hang on, I'm not 100% sure. But he didn't ask you whether you're 100% sure. So I could see why he maybe is like trying to press the point a little bit, because it almost looks like, I'm not saying that you are, but it seems like, or it could seem like to him, that you are dancing between, hey, I accept that that's the majority view, but hey, it's not certain. Whenever you put under pressure, it's like, okay, I'm not certain. And to get rid of all of that, if you're on the undecided position, then this won't work at all. So I think that's why he was like pressing this and trying to then ask it the other way around. And then I think you said there that you're not sure, which is, a good answer. That's why I said to you at the very beginning, if you just stayed with I don't know the whole way through, consistently I don't know, or I'm undecided, if using better language nowadays, then he can't run the cosmological argument. And if he does, the entire burden is on him. At the moment, you're giving him a gap where he can run it, and he thinks that you agree with at least some part of it. So it's going to be now, from his point of view, very difficult for you to deny, the Kalam argument.
With them 100%, isn't it?
Oh, but why do you disagree with them? On what point?
There's other factors and other things.
Give me an example.
Well, for the fact that energy can't be created nor destroyed. This might suggest that the energy in this universe may have...
Okay, can you continue that sentence, sorry? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Carry on. Carry on with the thermodynamic law. You stop.
Sorry?
Energy can be created or destroyed within a closed system.
Yeah.
It's different, isn't it?
Is the universe a closed system?
The universe is, of course.
So what's wrong?
Right, so energy within the universe, cannot be created or destroyed. So we're talking about the cause of the universe, which is outside of the universe, which is outside of a closed system. So it isn't energy. Yeah?
Well, this is what I said to you, Ned, and you said to me that everything that begins...
No, you said...
begins to exist must have had a cause. And then you said...
I didn't say that.
Then you said...
I didn't say that. I asked you the question. I didn't make a statement.
But then you said the universe itself, did it begin to exist? And I'm saying to you, I don't know.
All right.
The law that you're talking about...
Right. If the universe didn't begin to...
That's in the universe.
If the universe didn't begin to exist, that means it's always existed, isn't it? Now, if you're not agreeing with the scientists right now that the universe began to exist, explain to me why you think the universe has always
I
existed.
didn't say that it definitely has. I said that that's a possibility. It being...
What did we say? Possibility, probability.
It having started is a possibility where most of the...
What's the consensus of the cosmologists?
That's where the...
Alhamdulillah. Right. And you're an atheist, yeah?
Yeah.
And you off science.
Huh?
You got science, isn't it?
No.
You don't use the scientific method.
Why are you trying to put words in my mouth? I'm saying to you that I respect
it's a question.
I respect the scientific method, but I would not.
Do you use the scientific method?
Yeah, I would not say 100% everything that has been established by science is absolutely.
Do you use the scientific method?
We all use the scientific.
What is the scientific method?
Observation, hypothesis.
Of what?
Experiment.
Of what?
You asking me what scientific method?
Yeah, of what though? Of what we know, of what we can see, and what's
Can you
tangible.
explain in more detail?
Yes.
All right. The scientific method works basically like this. You would observe something happening, yeah.
Right.
Then you would think, why does that happen? Then you would come. That's your hypothesis would be, I think it happens for this reason.
Right.
Yeah. Then you develop an experiment to test your hypothesis.
Right.
To falsify it.
Right.
Yeah? Then you run that experiment, see the results, and then either prove that it was correct or false, or likely or unlikely, and then repeat.
Probability possible, yeah?
Or change something.
All right. Have the cosmological sciences done this?
Yeah, but
Okay, I think the other thing to add in here, Ansar, which you probably would, is that it makes predictions, and that's very powerful because some hypotheses that don't make predictions are weaker, and those that do make predictions can be falsified, and they're the ones that are going to be seen as sort of stronger, like with general relativity, right? Einstein made predictions which were falsifiable about the perihelion of Mercury going around the sun, and that was observed by Eddington in, I think, 1919 or 1929, wherever it was. Right, so that's what made him famous. It wasn't E equals mc squared if you read Universe from Nothing. So that was a very powerful theory, and of course it's been verified like thousands of times now. So the predictive power gives it the extra weight, if you like, as opposed to some other competing hypothesis that doesn't have predictive power.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you're doing an experiment like that with, I don't know, weights and measures and materials, that's quite straightforward.
Well, if you look at the reasons
when
why.
you're doing experiments like that, you're applying the scientific method to the universe as a whole, things are a bit more difficult.
Really, why?
Because we can't get, for example, we can't really get before the universe began and start.
No, but why are scientists, why is the consensus, why is this consensus of cosmologists saying that the universe hasn't always existed? Why are they saying that?
Because that's what it looks like.
But why are they saying that?
Because that's what it looks like.
Why does it look like that?
Because of the tools that they've used with telescopes and looking at the...
Right, so they've done the testable evidence and observed, yes?
That's what it looks like.
Right.
We don't know how much more there is to find out about the
But you can only go with what you know now, isn't it?
Yeah,
you can only believe what you believe now. You can't have faith in the future.
But then do you accept that what you know now may well be less than 1% of what there is to know? You don't even know how much there is more to know.
Well, we can only go, and we can know 100% now.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, I'm the sort of person who's not a very absolutist kind of person. So when science says this is the case, I'd say, yeah, it looks like that's the case, and that's the evidence. Yeah, that looks like that evidence leads to that being the case. I'll agree. But I wouldn't say 100% that's all there is, and this will be the truth.
What was that, Stops?
No, you can keep running. I said, no, that's a good point.
Okay, it is a good point, but then if that's the case, then you don't need to ever bring in about certainty, right? And what Hamza's asking Ansar to do here is take a position. And Ansar seems, at least from Hamza's point of view, it seems to me, because he keeps asking the question, it seems like from Hamza's point of view, Ansar isn't willing to take a position. He's going like, okay, yeah, it seems that way. And then he says, okay, is that the best that science do? And you go, yes, it is. But hang on, it's not certain. So he's like, okay, well, like put your stake in the ground somewhere, because from Hamza's point of view, he likely thinks that you're not putting your stake in, that you're like trying to hedge your bets. So he can't run anything against you because you're not, taking a position. And so I think that's why he keeps, at least that's what I'm presupposing why he keeps asking the question, because it may seem like to him that you're not being committal on the view here.
True forever and ever.
Yeah, but we only have two eventualities, isn't it? The universe either always existed or began to exist. If it always existed, according to the scientific consensus, we wouldn't have the universe as it is today.
Why not?
Because
that's nonsense, of course. This is just his claim. But let's hear his vacuous response for why.
Have moved apart.
It's complete nonsense. But anyway, let's carry on. I won't labour that point.
It's expanding, isn't it?
It is expanding.
Right, if it's infinite, if it's always existed, it would have moved apart millions of years
ago. It doesn't grow and collapse and grow and collapse.
But now you're bringing something else into it. No one's what's that about?
No,
okay, well, that's actually Sean Carroll's view, right? The contracting expanding model. There's a better name for it. I'm sure TDSA will immediately tell me in the comments. Oscillating universe. Thank you, Thunderous. There you go. Oscillating universe, right? So the view that a past eternal universe is impossible because it would have expanded beyond that time. No, that only assumes that there's the single universe, and if that were the case past eternally, then yes, this would have grown to the point where there would be zero energy in the universe. But that's not a model that anybody puts forward, right? Penrose's model is that there are eons of universes that keep going to that infinite, or to a point where there's little or no energy, and then he's got a method by which that universe kind of starts again, for want of a better word. It's more technical. We could read that at some point if it was worth it, but that's essentially his model. And there are others as well, like Guth's model of internal inflation. So, and he also believes the universe is past eternal. So that's not the case. I mean, but this is complex stuff, right? None of us are experts in this. And for Hamza to make, very simplistic claims like this is utterly nonsensical. Right? But that's
I would immediately interrupt him. I would immediately interrupt him and say, listen, what makes you the expert in this? Why are you able to talk about this? I'm not an expert. You're not an expert. Why are you pretending to be? Let's talk about something that we can agree that we know something about, and not this stupid thing about the cosmological argument. Ladies, gents, and others, we are at the end of the showtime, but we're only not even halfway through the video. Should we finish the video on overtime, or should we do this next week? What is the preference?
I'm okay for another half an hour, but I'm happy to go with the consensus of what everybody else would like to do.
You might as well carry on with the video, and we'll do the Quran next week. You're already in a flow with it, so.
No, I'm not going to go through the Quran now. It's either the question whether we stop here and then continue next week, or if we keep on going with the video.
Just go with the video and get it over and done with.
Ansar, you agree?
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Smart cat?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
Either though.
What-
Do you know that that couldn't have happened?
What's that?
The
No,
universe growing-
all I can deal with right now is what the consensus of the scientific model is.
And the consensus-
now I'm asking you, why are you against that?
I'm not against it. I still agree that that's what it looks like, and that's what the cosmologists agree.
All right, so
I'm not going to take
all right.
absolute.
Would you say it's reasonable for me to go with that?
Just stop here.
To believe that?
This is an important point that everybody needs to be aware of. That now we get to a point where Hamza realizes he can't get anywhere. So now he is trying to turn this around and start asking questions, showing his dominance in the conversation by now jumping into firing questions about a different topic, trying to control this and trying to push Ansar against, or whatever opponent he has, against the ropes. And don't fall for this, okay? Don't do this. Just give a quick answer, but keep on you keep on asking to keep him at a distance, to keep him away from this, because he's going to go into nonsensical questioning, which is really going to be stupid.
Yeah, I think whoever asks the questions is in control. I would have to say on this point, though, that I think that, and it's rare for me to say this, I have to be honest, that this question is a good question in the following sense. Is that Ansar has said that he accepts science, he accepts the overwhelming evidence if that points towards this. He's not hanging his hat on it with absolute certainty. But the question that Hamza is now asking is it reasonable for me to accept that? And I think it's very difficult now for Ansar to say, no, it's unreasonable for you to accept what the vast majority of cosmologists say, because that was your view at the time. So it'd be very unreasonable for you to say, no, you're not reasonable for accepting that. And that's what he wants to get the concession out of you. And that's why this whole questioning got to this point. If you had been undecided, this would never have been possible. And that's fine if you were of the view at that stage, but then you've got to be able to defend it, because he's going to say, well, is it reasonable? And you have to say yes. And now you're down to fighting about what's the most likely cause of a universe, rather than whether there's, in fact, that's the most likely option as opposed to a past eternal universe. And now you have to, what would happen here is that you would say, no, it's more likely that it's a multiverse or something else. He says it's God, etc. But I don't think that at this point you can deny that it's reasonable for him to accept the scientific hypothesis, even if it's only because it goes with his view. But you can't now, it seems to me, say, no, well, it's not reasonable for you to accept that, Hamza, because you've kind of said yes along the way. And at this point, he's like, okay, can I accept that now? Is it reasonable, right?
That the universe had a beginning.
Is it reasonable for me to go with the consensus of the scientists?
If you want to.
Is it reasonable?
I don't.
You think it's unreasonable? No.
I mean, I don't know.
I'm going to speak to him for 1 second.
I don't know.
You don't think it's reasonable?
No, I said that it's reasonable to go with it, but I wouldn't be.
I'm asking you
I wouldn't
to.
be absolute about
Would you say I'm being unreasonable by going off the scientific model?
No.
It wouldn't be, would it?
No, but it depends
Right.
to what extent. We said at the very
Well, I'm going off the scientific model.
We said at the very beginning about not being any absolutes. And
No, but I can only
we
go
have a scale of belief, and what I say to you is, even with all the evidence presented by all the scientists and cosmologists, all leading to the same understanding that the universe had a beginning, it's still not 100% absolute proof.
No one's saying 100% absolute proof, mate. We already agreed at the beginning. No, what I'm saying is it unreasonable for me to accept the scientific model?
If you say it's an absolute truth, then yes, it is unreasonable.
Why?
Because it's not an absolute.
And listen, I couldn't.
Okay, but he did say, Hamza, that he doesn't accept as unreasonable here. I think you're like, again, to my ear, it's like you're unwilling to just say, yes, it's reasonable for you to accept that because that's what the consensus said. What you could also say here is, hey, if the consensus was the other way around, would you then accept it? Because he's only accepting, I think we all know that he's only accepting it because it marries up with what he already believes. So there's a cognitive bias, which is something that you could highlight. But if you are of this position, then, just saying a straight out, yes, it's reasonable, is all you need to do. But I think maybe you were concerned that you're giving away too much by conceding that, yes, he's reasonable.
Yeah. And another suggestion, if you have a situation like that, you can always get out of it and say, well, if you want to, you need to just decide for yourself what the consequences are going to be. Because if you take position A and you say, yes, what are the consequences for you? And if you say no, what are the consequences? Have you thought about that? So this is a way of getting out.
Yeah.
I couldn't go for what they're saying, isn't
So
it?
what you can so listen to what I'm saying to you is, if you take the scientific model
Right.
and you run with it on the basis that it's tentative, I'll say fine, because we will know.
No, what you-
But for you to act as if it's an absolute truth that could never be changed ever in the future, That's not reasonable.
Well, you think it could be changed, that the universe always existed, and this idea that this moving apart business is wrong?
No, it could still be moving apart, but there could be other explanations for why it's moving apart.
And there couldn't be. All right. But listen, I'm not interested in the hocus pocus of the future. I can only deal with what's in front of me, can't I?
Yeah, and what's in front of you is not an absolute.
So it's not unreasonable for me to accept the scientific model. You think it's unreasonable for me to agree with Stephen Hawking? That's what you're saying.
What is in front of you is not an absolute.
But you're saying it's unreasonable for me to agree with Stephen Hawking. Is that what you're saying? It's reasonable or unreasonable?
No, what I'm saying to you is you have to qualify these things appropriately.
Well, has he not qualified it?
Not to absolute.
No, we can't talk absolutes.
But this is what I'm saying to you. For example, if you was to build a deductive syllogism, yeah, you couldn't use something like that because it's not a 100% guaranteed fact. Yeah. So that's why I'm saying you can't.
You can only work with what's in front of you.
Yeah, but if it's not an absolute fact, then
you can't say it's unreasonable for me to follow science. You can be
As a
reasonable.
modern, you can't.
I didn't say it was.
What else can I go?
Yeah, you see, because you kept bringing in this absolute thing, now you're trapped in that spiral of you keep bringing this up, and that's and if you're that view, if you are still that view, then cool, then you can hold somebody to that. But then of course somebody's going to say to you, Ansar, well, what can you know with absolute certainty, or what is absolute certainty? And you would probably say not much, and then it would be self-defeating. And so that's why I wouldn't go that route. And if you are a fallibist like me, then you'd have to grant this, that he's reasonable for that. And then, okay, what's the next step? Right now he's going to try and run the kalam on you. And you would probably have to agree, or at least it seems like most things have a cause. I mean, Skydar Phil has brought up the idea that, the radioactive decay, the cause of which particle decays appears to be entirely random. And if it is entirely random, then cause and effect, at least in that scenario, is not operational. So that's one for you to, he did it in a video and I was like, oh, that's an interesting one, right? Because it seems like cause and effect intuitively is in operation throughout the universe. It seems that way. But if it's in fact the case that there's not, well, then at least there's one case, if not more cases, where everything that begins to exist has a cause, may not be in operation with regards to the radioactive decay of a particle. One of them will decay, but which one will decay is entirely random, and therefore the cause and effect breaks down in that particular case. And if there's one case, then there's other cases that is possible, but it also defeats the everything that begins to exist as a cause claim, unless they're going to claim, well, that's not a beginning. And then you're down a different rabbit hole.
Rob, can I say something? That's a quantum mechanic observation. That the decay seems to come random because in quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity, they kind of collide. They're not really compatible. This is why a lot of astrophysicists are trying to find like a universal theory that can marry the two theories, like string theory and whatever. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, that's fine, but then you're committed to the position that you actually don't know whether everything that begins to exist has a cause. So then you can't run the kalam. If you're going to go with that route, then you can't go with the kalam, because now you're saying, well, I'm not actually sure whether everything that begins to exist does have a cause. So that rules out the kalam for you.
No, I'm just saying that's
gonna go off.
No, all I was saying that's a failure, or it's a perceived failure in the two theories. It can't really be said either or, because individually quantum mechanics works fine and the theory of relativity works fine, but when you try to marry the two, they don't.
Okay, but all I need is one example where it's the case that cause and effect does not operate in the way that we understand to scupper the kalam argument. Right, because he's asking Ansar, does he agree that everything that begins to, or he will ask, or he did ask, that everything that begins to exist have a cause? And if we can show one thing that doesn't, or is possible that it doesn't, then the argument doesn't run.
I didn't say it was unreasonable. I said it's reasonable as long as you accept the limitations, which are.
Of course, I know the limitations.
Absolute.
Right.
So,
but I can only go for what they put on the table, can't I?
Yeah, but
right. What do they put on the table?
That it looks like it was at a beginning.
Right. And what does everything that have a beginning have?
Of course.
Right. So is it unreasonable for me to believe the universe had a cause?
Well, no, it's not unreasonable for you to believe.
Alhamdulillah, that's it then.
To claim that as an absolute fact, then I would say that's unreasonable.
What? That's my belief, mate. I'm convinced by that.
I don't know if we're speaking the same language or something.
We are. Did I make the claim or did I say I'm convinced by it?
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying, yeah? Is the difference between a belief and what we discussed at the beginning.
What's the belief again, remind me?
To think something is true.
Convinced by. Trust.
Convinced by
have faith.
is,
Alhamdulillah. All right.
Same thing.
So I'm convinced.
Yeah. But to an absolute extent.
Yes.
Well, that's why I'm saying you're unreasonable.
Why?
Because that's not been a proven fact, absolutely. The universe having a beginning is based on the evidence evidence of the stars moving apart.
I can only base on evidence, can't I?
Yeah, I know.
At least I am using something. You're using nothing.
Exclusive evidence.
What are you doing, you see? I'll tell you what you're doing. I'll tell you what you're
You
doing.
could have evidence.
You move the goalpost when it doesn't suit your whims and desire. That's what you do.
What are you talking about?
When something goes against your position,
You're following
you reject it.
conversation. You're not following
I am completely. You change your stance when something goes against you, even if it's a top scientist.
If our friend here is...
Yeah, that's what you do.
I think you've been unreasonable.
All right.
You can't say to me.
I'm being...
I said what I
Go on,
think.
what?
Okay. First of all, not all the scientists do believe.
I can't remember. Does Ansar still get in the conversation? Or does this guy take over now? Because if he does, then we can stop it with Ansar. If there's still going to be something here, then I'm just.
I think
looking through the video.
it's mainly just them two. I think I just pipe up once to laugh at him when he says that he doesn't even know what Stephen Hawking's theory is.
Okay. All right. Well, I think. All right. If that's the end of it, then we can leave it there. I'm not sure this guy is any sort of professor. When I listened to it, I didn't think that he made particularly good points. I could be mistaken, but unless you guys want to do the last sort of 5 minutes, because it was really about Ansar's interaction with Hamza. If you guys want to do the last 5 minutes, we can.
No, that
Otherwise,
doesn't make
we can
sense.
stop there.
No, I don't think it makes sense. I think the exercise was just to look and see the tit for tat and all the moving around and shifting and doing and looking at the tactics that Hamza employs. And the thing is that not much has changed. He's still doing the same thing. He still doesn't understand that yes, if you voice your belief to somebody, that you are making a claim. Of course you are. He still doesn't understand that. He didn't understand this 3 years ago. As soon as somebody asks him questions, you cannot pin him down, but he's always going for his one kalam or his cosmological or something, and he only knows one thing. And then the funny thing is he tells others they are one-trick ponies. But I've never seen Hamza make any other argument than this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of his favorites, but he's had a good education from Skydive Full. But again, it tells you a lot about somebody's psyche when he takes away from a conversation with Skydive Full, who knows more than all of us put together on this particular topic. He takes away from it that he's the guy who says, "I don't know." And can you see how detrimental it is to say the words "I don't know"? Because even Skydive Full, if he'd said this is the undecided position, that would have sounded better in my view. I don't know is a perfectly reasonable if you qualify what you mean by I don't know. But the worst part is that he took away from at least 2 conversations, if not 3, with Skydive Full for an hour at a time. So he's had 3 hours to hear like the more in-depth information on this topic and why the kalam is not a good argument to run. And his takeaway is, well, Skydive Full doesn't know. And I'm going like, holy crap. Like, oftentimes you hear the term, there's no bad students, only bad teachers. I don't agree with that. And he is a wonderful example of that. Doesn't matter what you say to him, he's a very poor student. A, because he doesn't understand, and B, because it might be going against what he believes. So the brain shuts down or doesn't have the capability to take in information. And then the summary is, well, he's the position, atheist all at sea or atheist doesn't know, is the summary of what he's learned in 3 hours with Skydive Full. And you're like, well, if that's the case, your ability to understand anything outside of the Quran, and even that's problematic, is very, very limited. But I think hopefully, Ansar, there's been something for you there. It's easy for us to sit in the armchair and do it. And like you say, this was 3 years ago and you were a little bit under the weather and so on. But I think what it would make life easier is a few of these tweaks if you want to, and if that's what you believe. I mean, I don't want you to be swayed by something we say if that's not what you believe. But the whole thing could have been avoided with you trying to stick to epistemic certainty, but saying that science is a good tool, etc., and him trying to press you to get you to accept that he was reasonable to accept that. Because once you had accepted that that's likely the position at that time, just saying, yeah, I accept it, but not absolute, then it was done. But then presumably you were thinking, okay, now, once I grant him that, there's going to be more coming. Maybe you didn't think that, I don't know. But I think hopefully saying I'm undecided avoids that. Because then he can run the kalam and you can say, well, I'm undecided with everything as a cause. Everything begins to as a cause. What does it mean by begin to exist, etc., right?
The other thing that you can do, you can always say, okay, let me just grant you everything. Where are you going? To cut this whole conversation short and to push him to the point where he actually wants to go, because that is equally nonsensical. Because he say, okay, I'll grant you everything. Where are you going now? Well, there's a cause. Okay, what is the cause? And now he's going to go into this William Lane Craig bullshit, powerful. And you say, well, why is it powerful? And,
Yeah.
and so on
Yeah, I
and
see
so
what you're
forth.
saying,
Then you can
because-
kill him on
yeah.
those things.
Yeah, because then that puts everything in my control now, because he's the one making an argument having
Exactly.
to try and justify it. Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
good point as well. Yeah, I also agree with what Rob's saying as well. I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
like,
I mean, you did
a
well.
few
Come on.
years ago.
And it's not
Yeah.
even,
I think
it
the way
doesn't
it is
matter
is
on the
that-
hangover, the weather, but you did well. It's just a couple of things which we have learned watching. I mean, I've learned a lot watching these videos and just discussing them.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important what you guys do, because, obviously because of my work life routine, I really miss out your show a hell of a lot. I had to make some arrangements to appear tonight, but that's good because, I pay a lot of respect to you guys. I need to spend more time hanging around with you guys and watching your show as well, because there's obviously a lot for all of us to learn. 3 years ago, I was new at the park. This was in my first,
Come on.
probably first 2 months of being at the park. I wasn't aware of all these tactics so well, and especially in your face, like this guy firing questions at you, even this randomness nonsense.
Exactly.
I held on to something which, like Rob says, from the very beginning, if I had known better, I definitely wouldn't have. But my position was is that at that moment I was dealing with their whole spiel of getting onto the script with the Kalam argument. So for me, stopping them at that initial point of absolutes and not committing to absolutes myself was the thing that I was kind of trying to avoid. But like you say, it's not just good enough, because then that obviously put me into this position where the whole debate, that was the thing that I was holding on to, and even not consistently. So I get that, I wouldn't do that again, I'd say, from now. But yeah, like
Now go to Hamza's den and kill them.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ready.
Because
Any words
they're on
from
a
your
discussion
side?
with scientism or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a red herring. I'm not sure how many atheists believe in scientism. But anything from your side, Thunderous?
Sorry?
Anything from your side? You've been very, very quiet there in terms of what you observed from Ansar or anything else.
It's just not the way I would pursue it. I felt that when I was listening to Hamza, I did think to myself, well, you don't have to necessarily agree with him, but he does come across smart. He's not a stupid man by any means. And I did start questioning, well, I don't think he's stupid. I mean, you may not necessarily, I think from the point of view of how can such a man who reasons and discusses things the way that he is, but still believes in Islam? That's the point I'm trying to, I got from that. How can somebody like that believe in Islam, considering that he's trying to defend, defend intelligent design then, but still believe in Islam? It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, well, I think I probably disagree with you a little bit there, Thunderous, but that's okay. I don't think that he has a good understanding of pretty much any topic that I've ever heard. He has got an effect of being able to bulldoze people in Speaker's Corner and to talk over them and stuff. And, even around the belief thing, he's still not clear on that. Even recently when he did the live stream, and when I was on there talking about these sort of things, and even when we did the review this past week, right, he's very quick to try and get a position that he's not even justified in accepting, that his fellow Muslims won't go as far as saying, for the most part. So there's a huge bias. There's not a willingness to learn. And if you'd spend time, or anybody had spent time speaking to Sky Duffel, you could disagree with him, but you'd come away more educated about what the science says, because he's reading the actual papers, he's interviewing these people around the world, so he's quite well informed on this. So whatever your view is, you'd be hard-pressed not to learn something, and you'd be hard-pressed to go against it unless you had a better understanding of things. He's got none of that. And he comes away from something like that with, like, I don't know. Or he takes the view that all atheists say X, Y, and Z. And when I ask him, why do you think they say that? He's like, he doesn't have anything, to say. And this is a guy that's been doing this for 18 years. Thunderous, he doesn't know what the Euthyphro dilemma is. After 18 years, apparently, as an apologist. I mean, virtually everybody that I know of that's been doing this for a little while has heard of it. They might not have a deep understanding, but they know what it is. So
I've never come across this guy before. This is the second time I've ever heard him. You've got to bear in mind that there are a myriad of Dawah Gandhists, but I stopped listening to them years ago because particularly with the one that you brought up, was it Dawah in the streets and people like that? I'd had enough. I couldn't take it was hard to endure, because I think for me, because of the deceitful way that they they go away about the Bible. That's why. So I thought I'd leave all of that alone, and I pursued a different angle probably about 10 years ago. So these guys, I don't know, apart from the more popular ones like Hamza Myatt and Abdul Rahim Green. My attitude has always been now to go to the Muslim scholars for us to get to see what they're saying about Islam and the Quran, take that information, and then when a Muslim challenges me when I bring it up, I say, well, this is what your people are saying, this is what your books are saying, and this is what your people are saying. This to me is just, I listen to stuff like this and think some things, you're just arguing about words. That's what you're doing, you're just arguing about words.
Me, I just don't understand why two people, otherwise strangers, would subject themselves to 30 minutes of torture where one person is trying to persecute the other for not believing in some thing that he thinks that the person ought to believe. It's just painful.
I don't know. We've either got a troll or we've got somebody that's profoundly uninformed. Let's just say it's amusing.
This is probably Subur making fun of us.
But this is even our fellow theists on this panel, right? I don't think there's any theist on this panel that believes the Earth is flat. So I mean that option.
No, absolutely not.
Whatever we think of.
Even those who say that the Bible does say that the Earth is flat because it talks about the four corners of the Earth, I do not believe the Earth is flat. I don't understand the difference between literal and figurative. So no, the Earth is not flat.
But what I mean is, and that's cool. I mean, whatever our view is of religion or Islam in particular, or whatever, the even more silly claim is that the Earth is flat, right? I'm vehemently, think Islam is profoundly mistaken. But anybody that believes the Earth is flat makes Islam look like a scientific endeavor. That's how ridiculous that claim is, right?
Okay, but the comment by SmartCat,
and we should.
I just want to address what SmartCat said. A lot of times you come across people who make claims which catch other people unaware because they don't have enough and sufficient information on something. So it doesn't matter whether you're a car mechanic standing next to a car which you know is shot, somebody is saying, wow, this is such a great car, you need to buy it and I'll give it to you for 3,000. Okay, make it just because it's Monday, I'll give it to you for 2,800. And you are standing there and you think, dude, this thing is worth 300, not 3,000. Do you keep quiet or not? And if you're a car mechanic and you know something is wrong with the car, if you have any kind of altruism or any kind of empathy, you will speak up and you will say, listen, this car is not worth it. Please don't cheat the guy. Don't tell him some bullshit story. It's not worth that much. This is why I speak up. This is why if I'm standing there, I will say, look, don't talk shit. This is not true. Don't tell me this and this is the case if it is not. So I will speak up and I will take this guy to task and say, why are you saying this? Why are you deceiving other people? This is just from just because I'm a nice person.
No, I don't have a problem with your standpoint or Rob's standpoint. It's just for me, like, I would never subject myself to that type of torture. I mean, Ansar, I gotta commend you. No, seriously, because regardless of what I believe, like I don't need to proclaim my belief system to anybody, and I'm not going to allow somebody to pride my belief system. It's just, it's a belief system. It's supposed to be private. But if you guys are trying to talk about, something, it just shouldn't be the way that I see it unfolding in the streets between Ansar and Azma.
But Muslims have to, the same as Christians. They are obliged to spread the message.
I was just going to say,
right?
I was just going to say, I mean, the more I listen to you, SmartCat, the more I think you're actually not a Muslim. You're keeping religion private. That's not exactly the Muslim way.
I didn't say keep your religion private. I said, if you have a belief system, I said, if you have why would you subject, if your belief is sacred and it's special to you, why would you subject your belief system to antagonisms? You know what I mean? Like,
can I answer that?
There's a difference.
Yeah, but we were both there. We were both there independently. No one forces us to go there, and we both wanted to engage in the discussion. We both could easily have walked away. It's the thing that people like to do. He believes so much that he feels the need to tell people he believes and convince them that it's true. I disbelieve so much that I feel the need to turn up and tell people that I don't agree and I think it's not true.
So why did it seem like he was trying to put you on on the stake? He's trying to. It felt like a prosecution. Yeah. felt like a
Yeah,
process.
because
That
you know why?
is-
It's because if
You
if
know.
me and you say we're good friends and we decided to have a discussion about certain things, we may well have an open and honest discussion and come to some understanding, or even fall out. Who knows? But the thing is, people like him have various tactics. I guess people like me have something you might call tactics as well. It's a little bit of a kind of intellectual interplay, like a bit of a game, if you know what I mean.
But Smart Cat, let me respond to your thing about why you don't. You're suggesting that if you hold sacred beliefs, why you don't want to put them out there, or you don't want to have them critiqued, or you don't want to engage in like a discussion of this sort. I guess the question is for all of us to consider if we, and again, this is like a logical syllogism, right? Well, I'm not putting it in syllogistic form, but the logic flows one from the other. If you care about what is true, you believe that what you have a view that what you believe is true and that other people should believe what is true as well, and you ask them and they do, then there is at least an inference that you want to share the truth with other people because they want to hear the truth. You believe it's true and they want to hear from you. So in that sense, holding a belief sacred is almost like doing a disservice if the other criteria are met.
Can I just say, just with your saying there, Robs, that what you're just saying there is a principle from Ezekiel 33. But if you believe whatever a person believes, let's say for instance a Hindu is a Hindu because he believes that Hinduism is a truth. Otherwise, he wouldn't believe it. I mean, as the phrase goes, stand up all those who were deceived. So by implication, if what your faith is truth, then everything else by implication is a lie. So you're under obligation to expose the lie and pull people over to your truth. That's the whole point. Because if it's from the point of view of theism, there's always going to be a punishment, if you like, for believing the lie. So it's incumbent on you to expose the lie and pull everybody over to the truth.
No, the truth demolishes lies.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's my point. So, okay, here's an example. Please, Mark, let me give you an example. The Bible teaches Jesus died. The Quran teaches Jesus didn't die. One of these books is lying. On that point of view, as a Muslim, it's incumbent on you, if what you believe is true, is to tell Christians, no, Jesus didn't die. It was a joke. Right? Allah did it. And
No,
it's incumbent on, no, let me finish. Please let me finish. In the same way, it is incumbent on Christians to approach you and say, no, the Quran is lying. Jesus did die. Only one of those in the eyes of God is true if there is a God.
do you want to get into this, or are you just using this as an example?
I think let's do it. If you guys want to do it, let's do it on Discord. We can go to Discord after that. Smart Cat, have you connected to our Discord?
I can connect. Yeah, sure.
Let me post it again in the chat here. I'll give you the link, and I think maybe because Stops, I think, wants to bring it to an end now anyway. So if I give you the link here, pop onto Discord because we go there after this, and then you guys can have that conversation and it can go in any direction. So I'll post it here in the main chat again, and have a look in the private chat here. There's a link to it. Click on that. You can download the app for your phone and then connect SmartCat, and then you can come in because it allows up to 100 people to have a conversation at one time, and it's a place where a lot more people can have a chat, and it's offline, not recorded, and all that sort of stuff.
And it's a pity I'm not allowed to go on the live stream of Hamza's Den, otherwise I would love to gate crash there.
Oh, they're running it now, are they? Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right,
then
Stops, do you want to bring it to an end?
Yes. It's what is left for me to do is to read a short hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, and this is also from Bukhari. And this time it's narrated by Amr bin Maymun. And this guy says he is of the opinion that during the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, I saw a she-monkey surrounded by a number of monkeys. They were stoning it because it had committed illegal sexual intercourse. I too stoned it along with them. We've talked about this. This has come up before. This is the most ridiculous hadith. That number one, monkeys are much more moral than that. They don't stone others. Why would a human being stone another a female monkey for having illegal sexual intercourse. I mean, can you believe monkeys are supposed to have now laws which regulate who is allowed to have sexual intercourse with whom?
How can it be illegal in the animal kingdom? It's only illegal by implication if there's a law. If there's a how is it
This is so
illegal?
funny. I mean, you could spend an hour just talking about the ridiculous concepts.
And I think that hadith is trying to back up the other point where Allah turns Jews into monkeys and monkeys into swine.
But we will never know. We will never know who came up with these things. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you for the panel. Thank you for the chat. Thank you, everybody watching. Please don't forget to give us a thumbs up or maybe even a thumbs down on the way out. It doesn't really matter. I'd love to know why people give us a thumbs down, but people never know. If you have any requests, if you have any ideas what we should be doing, please give us a shout. Let us know. And we'll see you all next Friday. Thank you very much. Any last comments from panel?
Thanks very much. Thanks to Ansar and SmartCat and everybody who's viewing. See you next week, Friday, 8 p.m.
Good night, good morning, good evening to wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the lesson, guys.
It's not a lesson, you dodo.